Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to History Channel. Today, I will show you about the entire history of ancient Rome, 3-hour relaxing bedtime documentary, The Italian Peninsula, before Rome. Long before Rome emerged as the center of an empire, the Italian Peninsula was a quiet landscape shaped by soft valleys, rocky coastlines, and gentle rolling hills. The lands were dotted with small settlements where different tribes lived in modest clusters, each community connected by simple footpaths that crossed through forests of oak and chestnut. The climate was warm and mild, with long summers that brought golden light across the hills, and winters that were cool enough to gather people around shared hearths. Streams fed into broader rivers, creating fertile plains that allowed early farmers to grow barley, wheat, olives, and grapes. Life here moved with a slow, seasonal rhythm, shaped more by nature than by ambition. Among these early inhabitants were the Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans. The Latins lived mainly on the plains, building small wooden huts with thatched roofs. They tended their crops, cared for their animals, and followed the timeless cycles of harvests and festivals. The Sabines occupied hillier regions, often settling in villages that overlooked valleys below. They were pastoral people who moved their flocks along familiar routes as the seasons shifted. The Etruscans, to the north, were more advanced, with structured cities and skilled artisans who shaped metal, carved stone, and painted frescoes. Though culturally different, these groups shared the land in a patchwork of peaceful coexistence, interrupted occasionally by disagreements over resources but rarely by organized conflict. The landscape itself played a quiet but powerful role in shaping early life. The Apennine Mountains stretched like a spine down the peninsula, offering a natural barrier that separated communities while still allowing cautious trade and travel through the passes. The western coastline, where Rome would eventually rise, offered access to the Tyrrhenian Sea. Waves rolled gently against the shore, carrying fishing boats that supplied villages with food and occasional exotic shells from distant places. Rivers such as the Tiber wound through the land, providing fresh water and transportation routes that connected people in subtle ways. Life at this time was not hurried. People worked with the sun and rested with the stars. Families gathered in open courtyards for meals cooked over simple fires. Children played near the fields and learned the skills of their parents. In the evenings, elders recited stories of ancestors, spirits, and the natural world. These tales gave shape to a growing sense of identity, though no one yet imagined a great city would one day arise from their modest world. This gentle foundation, a land of mixed tribes, slow rhythms, and quiet development, created the perfect environment for something new to form. The Italian peninsula was not a stage waiting for a single people. Rather, it was a living landscape that nurtured the early growth of traditions, skills, and alliances that would eventually merge into something far greater. In these simple beginnings, the seeds of Rome were quietly taking root, shaped not by rulers or armies, but by the calm persistence of everyday life. The mythic origins, Romulus and Remus. The story of Rome's creation does not begin with armies or kings, but with the quiet legend passed down through generations. According to tradition, the twin brothers Romulus and Remus were born into a world shaped by fate and touched by mystery. Their story begins along the banks of the Tiber River, at a time when the land was still wild and filled with thick underbrush, tall reeds, and the gentle sound of water moving over stones. It was here, in this quiet setting, that the twins' lives were said to have started under extraordinary circumstances. Their mother, Rhea Silvia, was a Vestal virgin, bound to a sacred vow of purity. The father of the twins was said to be Mars, the god of war, although some believe their birth was simply surrounded by myth rather than divine intervention. Regardless of the truth, their arrival caused alarm. Their uncle, who feared they might become a threat, ordered them to be abandoned. A servant carried them to the river and placed them in a small basket, setting them adrift on the slow-moving current. The basket floated gently along the water, brushing against reeds and drifting toward a quiet shore where it finally came to rest. Here, according to legend, a she-wolf discovered the infants. Instead of harming them, she approached with a protective instinct. She sheltered them in a cave and nursed them as if they were her own. This cave, known later as the Lupercal, became a sacred symbol of Rome's origins. The twins grew strong under her care, watched over by the steady rhythms of nature and the quiet hum of life along the riverside. Soon, a shepherd named Faustulus found them and brought them into his home. He and his wife raised the boys with warmth, teaching them the ways of the land and the skills needed to survive. As the twins reached adulthood, they became known for their courage and leadership. They gathered followers among the shepherds and youths of the region. Eventually, they learned the truth of their birth and confronted the uncle who had ordered their deaths. Once justice was restored, the brothers sought to build a new settlement near the place where the she-wolf had saved them. It was a place that held symbolic meaning, tied to resilience, survival, and the quiet mysteries of the land. But as the story goes, the brothers disagreed about the exact location. The dispute grew tense, and in the end, Romulus slew Remus. With sorrow and determination, he founded the city that would bear his name, Rome. This myth, filled with symbolic imagery, reflects themes that shaped Roman identity: strength born from struggle, loyalty to the land, and the belief that destiny guides the course of history. Though mythological, the story carries a quiet, timeless quality. It sets the tone for Rome's journey, shaped by hardship, touched by legend, and built from the simplest beginnings along a calm riverbank. In these soft, ancient echoes, the spirit of Rome slowly awakened. The 7 kings of Rome. Before Rome became a republic, it was guided by a succession of 7 kings. Their reigns formed the early backbone of the city, shaping everything from its rituals to its first public buildings. The earliest kings ruled modestly, their authority grounded in tradition rather than wealth or force. Each king contributed something meaningful to the growing settlement, establishing structures that would endure long after their lifetimes. Romulus, the first king, organized the early community into tribes and established the Senate, a council of elders who offered guidance and stability. His reign brought form to the once scattered settlement, giving the people shared customs and a sense of belonging. After his mysterious disappearance, some believed he rose to the heavens during a storm. The city was left in search of new leadership. Numa Pompilius, the second king, was known for his peaceful nature. He introduced religious practices that shaped Roman identity for centuries. Temples, rituals, and priesthoods began under his guidance, allowing the people to find comfort in shared ceremonies. His calm governance brought a sense of order that helped the young city grow with confidence. The third king, Tullus Hostilius, shifted toward expansion. Under his rule, Rome strengthened its military presence while maintaining a steady internal structure. Following him came Ancus Marcius, who balanced war and peace. He founded the port of Ostia, bringing Rome closer to the sea and opening gentle pathways for trade and cultural exchange. The city's connection to the wider world quietly expanded. The final 3 kings were Etruscan. This period saw significant transformations. Tarquinius Priscus introduced major building projects, laying foundations for what would become the Forum. Servius Tullius reformed the political structure and expanded the city's boundaries with walls that embraced the growing population. These developments gave Rome a sense of permanence. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, ruled with harshness. His reign strained the city's patience and eventually led to his exile. With his departure came the end of monarchy and the beginning of a new chapter, the Roman Republic. These 7 kings, whether fully historical or softened by myth, each contributed to Rome's early shape. Their combined efforts, steady improvements, and gradual expansions built a foundation strong enough to support the immense growth that would follow. Through their stories, we see a city emerging slowly, shaped by leaders who guided it from scattered huts to a unified and promising settlement. The rise of the Roman Republic. With the fall of the final king, Rome entered a quiet but meaningful transformation. The city shifted from the rule of a single monarch to a system guided by elected officials and a council of experienced elders. This change did not happen suddenly or with dramatic upheaval. Instead, it unfolded with a careful sense of balance, shaped by the memory of past leadership and the desire to avoid repeating old mistakes. The people of Rome sought a new structure, one that preserved stability while preventing any individual from gaining too much power. It was the beginning of the Roman Republic, a system that would influence the world for centuries. Two magistrates known as consuls were chosen each year. Their authority was shared, ensuring that neither stood above the other. This shared leadership brought a calming sense of accountability. The Senate, composed of respected elders, offered advice and continuity. Their long memory of past events helped guide decisions in a measured way. Together, these elements formed a framework that emphasized cooperation, reflection, and gradual progress. The early republic was far from the grand powerhouse it would one day become. Yet within its simple design, there was a quiet strength. Citizens played a role in public affairs, gathering in assemblies to vote on matters that shaped their collective future. In these gatherings, voices carried across open spaces, blending the hopes of farmers, merchants, and craftsmen. Though their world was still small and their influence limited, these early efforts at shared governance planted the seeds for a more participatory society. As the republic took root, its values began to form. Duty, discipline, and respect for tradition became important ideals. These principles guided daily life, as well as political decisions. Officials were expected to act with dignity and restraint, remembering that power was temporary and held only in service to the community. Rituals and ceremonies reinforced this idea, reminding leaders and citizens alike that they were part of something larger than themselves. The transition to the Republic also brought subtle changes to the rhythm of life in Rome. Markets grew busier as the city attracted traders from nearby towns. Craftspeople produced pottery, tools, and simple ornaments that reflected the tastes of a growing population. Roads were improved, making it easier for people to travel, trade, and share ideas. Even as the city expanded, it maintained a sense of familiarity. Families still gathered at dusk, sharing bread and olives in the soft glow of evening fires. Children still played in courtyards, learning the stories of their ancestors. The rise of the Roman Republic was not defined by sudden transformation, but by the patient shaping of a new identity. It represented a quiet commitment to stability and shared purpose. The city, once led by kings, now moved forward with a structure that encouraged cooperation, resilience, and gradual change. This early period laid the foundation for the remarkable journey that Rome would soon begin, guided by a system that balanced tradition with thoughtful adaptation. The early Roman people in the early days of the Republic, the people of Rome lived lives that were simple but full of quiet purpose. Their homes were modest structures made of wood and clay, with thatched roofs that rustled softly when the wind passed over them. Streets were narrow and often unpaved, lined with small workshops where artisans shaped pottery, tools, and clothing. Life moved at a gentle pace, guided by the sun and the rhythms of the seasons. Each day brought familiar tasks that connected families to the land and to one another. The Roman family, or familia, formed the heart of society. It included not only parents and children, but sometimes grandparents, servants, and extended relatives. Meals were shared experiences, bringing everyone together around simple dishes of grains, vegetables, and occasionally meats or fish. Bread dipped in olive oil was a common staple, and wine, diluted with water, was often enjoyed in moderation. These meals were more than nourishment, they were moments of connection, where stories were shared and the events of the day quietly discussed. Religion also played an important role in daily life. The early Romans believed in numerous household spirits who protected their homes, fields, and loved ones. Small altars were kept inside houses, decorated with offerings of fruit or small figurines. These rituals brought a sense of comfort and continuity, tying families to ancient traditions. Public festivals were held throughout the year, filled with music, simple games, and community gatherings. Even in these celebrations, the mood remained calm and orderly, reflecting the values that shaped Roman identity. Work filled much of each day. Farmers tended their fields, ensuring that crops grew steadily under the Mediterranean sun. Craftsmen shaped tools and pottery with careful hands, passing their skills to the next generation. Traders traveled short distances to nearby towns, exchanging goods and sharing news. Every task, no matter how small, contributed to the slow but steady growth of the city. Life was not luxurious, but it was dependable. The people found comfort in familiar routines and a strong sense of belonging. Children grew up learning the customs of their families and the expectations of their society. They were taught to respect their elders, honor the gods, and carry themselves with modesty. Games and simple toys filled their playtime, offering moments of joy amid daily responsibilities. As they grew older, boys learned the skills needed for farming or craftsmanship, while girls learned the household practices that sustained family life. Despite its simplicity, early Rome was a place full of quiet energy. People believed in the future of their city, even if they could not yet imagine what it would one day become. Their strength came not from wealth or power, but from a shared commitment to tradition, community, and steady growth. These early Romans laid the foundation of a culture that valued resilience, cooperation, and the gentle harmony of everyday life. In their calm routines and timeless customs, the spirit of Rome slowly took shape. Rome's first steps toward expansion. As the Roman Republic found its footing, the city began to interact more confidently with neighboring communities. These early encounters were not driven by grand ambition, but by practical needs: protecting farmland, securing borders, and ensuring access to valuable resources. Rome's growth was steady rather than explosive, shaped by cautious decisions and careful observation. The surrounding hills and plains carried the footsteps of traders, travelers, and occasionally rival groups, each leaving quiet marks on Rome's awareness of the wider world. The Romans developed a measured approach to expansion. They formed alliances with nearby towns, exchanging goods and pledging mutual support. These agreements helped maintain a sense of security, allowing the city to focus on internal development. When conflicts did arise, they were often small skirmishes over territory or access to water. Rome's early soldiers were farmers and craftsmen who took up weapons when called upon, returning to their fields once danger passed. Their strength came from discipline and unity rather than forceful aggression. One of the earliest groups Rome encountered were the Etruscans, who lived to the north. The Etruscans were more advanced, with refined art, structured cities, and skilled metalwork. Through trade and occasional conflict, Rome absorbed elements of their culture, adopting clothing styles, architectural techniques, and religious symbols. These influences enriched Roman society, adding depth to its traditions and shaping the evolving identity of the Republic. To the south, Rome interacted with the Latins and Sabines. These relationships were built on a mixture of cooperation and cautious rivalry. Roads and pathways connected villages, allowing people to exchange ideas alongside goods. As Rome grew in population and stability, it began to play a larger role in regional matters. Other communities recognized this shift and responded with their own alliances, creating a delicate balance of influence across the peninsula. Rome's first significant expansions were modest. The city worked to secure nearby hills and valleys, strengthening its defenses and ensuring reliable access to farmland. Small fortifications were constructed to guard key routes. These early steps were taken not out of conquest, but out of the desire to protect a way of life that had slowly grown stronger. The Romans believed that stability came from careful planning and steady progress, rather than bold, sweeping action. As Rome's reputation grew, so did the responsibilities of its leaders. The Senate discussed diplomatic decisions with thoughtful deliberation, weighing the potential risks and rewards of each choice. The consuls oversaw both civic matters and military concerns, ensuring that the city remained united during times of uncertainty. This balanced approach helped Rome navigate early challenges while maintaining a sense of calm and continuity. By the end of this early period, Rome had quietly transformed from a small settlement into a recognized regional power. Its influence stretched farther than before, supported by strong alliances, disciplined citizens, and a growing sense of purpose. These first steps toward expansion set the stage for greater developments to come. Though still modest, the foundations were strong, and the path ahead, though long, was beginning to take shape with steady confidence. The conflict of the orders in the quiet early years of the Roman Republic, society was shaped by two broad groups: the patricians, who were families of noble ancestry, and the plebeians, who represented the wider population of farmers, craftsmen, and laborers. Although Rome was changing politically, deep social divisions remained. At first, these divisions were subtle, felt more as an undercurrent than a sharp divide. Yet as the Republic began to deepen its identity, the differences grew more noticeable. Patricians held most of the important roles in government, while plebeians often felt their voices were heard only in limited ways. The conflict of the orders did not begin with dramatic events, but with quiet frustrations. Plebeian citizens, who formed the backbone of Rome's workforce and military, felt that their contributions deserved greater representation. They wanted assurances that laws applied fairly to all, not just to those of higher status. Their concerns were rooted in everyday experiences, debts that seemed difficult to escape, disputes that lacked impartial judgment, and leadership decisions that did not always reflect the needs of the majority. The patricians, accustomed to traditional authority, were cautious about change. They valued long-standing customs and believed leadership required experience and lineage. But the city was growing, and with growth came new expectations. Tensions slowly increased, not through violence, but through repeated discussions, disagreements, and moments when plebeian voices insisted on being acknowledged. These periods of strain encouraged Rome to look inward and consider what kind of society it wanted to become. Eventually, plebeians chose to withdraw from the city in what became known as the First Secession. They camped outside Rome, creating a pause in the usual rhythms of life. Without them, fields went untended, workshops fell silent, and the heartbeat of daily activity slackened. This absence created a moment of reflection. Leaders recognized that Rome could not function without the cooperation of its diverse population. Conversations began once more, this time with a greater willingness to compromise. As a result, the office of the tribune of the plebs was created, a role designed to give plebeians an official voice in government. These tribunes held the power to protect citizens from unfair treatment and could veto decisions they believed harmful. The establishment of this office brought a sense of progress and reassurance. Although social differences did not vanish, the Republic became more inclusive, creating a shared path forward. The conflict of the orders was not a single event, but a gradual journey toward balance. It showed Rome's ability to adapt, to listen, and to grow without abandoning its core values. Through patient negotiation and steady adjustments, Rome strengthened its foundations, creating a society where more citizens felt represented and heard. Rome and the Latin League. As Rome established its identity within the Republic, it also strengthened its connections beyond its borders. One of the earliest and most meaningful of these relationships was with the Latin League, a loose alliance of Latin-speaking communities scattered across the surrounding region. These towns and villages were bound together by shared language, cultural practices, and a sense of belonging to a broader heritage. Their histories were woven together like threads of a single fabric, each community contributing its own traditions and customs. Interactions among the Latins were familiar and largely peaceful. People traveled between towns for festivals, trade, and family gatherings. Simple marketplaces buzzed with exchanges of grain, pottery, and livestock. Travelers carried stories along the dusty roads, sharing news of events unfolding across the hills and valleys. These gentle movements of goods and ideas created a natural harmony among the Latin peoples. Rome's involvement in the Latin League grew gradually. At first, the relationship focused on mutual protection. The region faced occasional threats from neighboring groups, and the communities understood the strength of cooperation. Alliances were formed to defend land, trade routes, and shared cultural spaces. The agreements were straightforward: support one another when danger arose, respect each community's autonomy, and maintain balance among the various leaders. As Rome expanded its influence, it did so carefully. The city's leaders aimed to build trust through consistent actions rather than force. Rome contributed soldiers when needed and offered guidance in diplomatic matters. Its reliability made it a valuable partner. Over time, Rome's role within the alliance evolved from participant to quiet leader, a shift that occurred naturally as the city grew in population and capability. These relationships were not without occasional disagreements. Territory, traditions, and leadership roles sometimes sparked debate. Yet the overall tone remained measured and practical. The Latins valued stability and cooperation, and Rome shared these priorities. When disputes did arise, they were often resolved through council meetings held in open spaces where representatives from each community gathered to speak. These gatherings, though not always easy, helped reinforce the sense of unity. Rome's growing cooperation with the Latin League eventually strengthened its position across the peninsula. With allies nearby and trusted relations established, the Republic could focus on internal development and carefully navigate external challenges. This network of partnerships allowed Rome to maintain peace and stability, offering a steady environment for its citizens to continue building their lives. The relationship with the Latin League represented an important step in Rome's ascent, one defined not by conquest, but by collaboration. By working patiently with neighboring communities, Rome gained allies, cultural connections, and a broader sense of identity. This early diplomacy demonstrated the Republic's ability to expand its influence thoughtfully, through trust and shared purpose, rather than dominance. Daily life in the expanding Republic. As Rome strengthened its place among neighboring communities, daily life for its citizens began to develop in richer and more varied ways. The city grew busier, and routines became more organized, shaped by new opportunities and the slow but steady expansion of the Republic. Markets filled with fresh produce, handmade goods, and tools crafted with practiced hands. The sound of conversation drifted through the air as people shared stories, exchanged information, and negotiated small trades that supported local life. Homes were still modest, but as prosperity grew, some families added improvements. Courtyards became more common, offering open spaces for cooking, gathering, and enjoying the gentle warmth of the Roman sun. Children played with simple toys carved from wood or shaped from clay, their laughter echoing through narrow streets. Adults worked diligently, whether tending fields, crafting items, or managing small businesses. Their efforts provided a sense of stability that nourished the community. Religious practices continued to guide daily routines. Shrines dedicated to household gods reminded families of the unseen guardians they believed protected their homes. Offerings of bread, fruit, or small figurines were placed on altars during quiet moments. These rituals brought comfort and a sense of order to the day. Public festivals offered breaks from work, inviting people to gather for music, performances, and shared meals. These events strengthened connections among neighbors and reinforced the values that held the community together. As the Republic expanded, new ideas and goods flowed into the city. Traders arrived from nearby regions carrying fabrics, metals, and stories of distant places. These exchanges exposed Romans to different customs, encouraging gradual changes in clothing styles, tools, and ways of thinking. Though such changes were gentle, they added depth to the cultural landscape. Infrastructure improvements slowly transformed the city. Roads were maintained more carefully, enabling easier travel and safer journeys. Wells and simple aqueducts provided access to fresh water, supporting health and growth. Workshops expanded as the demand for goods increased, and young apprentices learned skills that promised long-lasting careers. Family life remained central to Roman culture. Even as the city grew, evenings still brought people home to share meals and stories. Lamps flickered in doorways, casting warm light onto the stone streets. Parents taught their children lessons about respect, duty, and tradition, values they believed essential for the Republic's future. Although Rome was not yet the vast empire it would become, the spirit of the city was already forming. It was a place where ordinary people found meaning in daily routines, where small efforts added up to collective progress. Life was simple, but it carried a quiet optimism, a belief that the future held promise and that the Republic would grow stronger with each passing season. Religion and the Roman gods' religion played a steady and comforting role in early Roman life. It shaped the days with gentle rituals and anchored the community in shared beliefs passed down through generations. The Romans saw the divine not as distant or abstract, but as quietly woven into the rhythms of daily existence. Every hearth, field, and crossroads held subtle sacred meaning. This connection between life and the divine provided reassurance during moments of uncertainty and strengthened the people's sense of identity as the republic developed. At the center of Roman religion were the major gods Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Vesta, and others, each representing important aspects of the world. Jupiter oversaw the sky and the order of all things. Mars symbolized strength and protection, especially valued in a society where citizens often served as soldiers. Vesta guarded the hearth, the heart of every home. Temples dedicated to these gods were places of quiet devotion. People visited them to offer prayers, leave small tokens, or simply spend time in peaceful reflection. Beyond the grand deities, early Romans believed strongly in household gods known as Lares and Penates. These spirits protected homes, storerooms, and family meals. Families honored them with tiny shrines inside their houses, lighting small lamps or placing pieces of bread or fruit before them. These simple gestures connected families with generations of tradition. They also served as moments of calm, inviting people to pause and feel gratitude for the comfort of their homes. Priests and priestesses oversaw public rituals, ensuring that ceremonies were performed correctly. These rituals were less about elaborate displays and more about preserving harmony between humans and the divine. Seasonal festivals marked planting, harvest, and changes in weather. During these events, communities gathered in open spaces, sharing food and participating in gentle celebrations. Music, dances, and colorful garments filled the air with joy, yet the atmosphere remained respectful and grounded. Religion also shaped political life. The Senate consulted augurs, priests who interpreted signs from the natural world before important decisions. The movement of birds, the direction of the wind, and other small details were believed to reveal the will of the gods. These interpretations brought a sense of thoughtfulness to leadership, reminding officials that their choices held both earthly and spiritual consequences. As the Republic expanded, it absorbed practices from neighboring cultures, particularly the Etruscans and Greeks. New gods and rituals slowly blended with existing traditions. This openness enriched Roman religion, making it more diverse while preserving its common core. People adapted new ideas without abandoning the familiar ones that brought them comfort. Through all these practices, religion served as a gentle thread weaving the community together. It helped people navigate life's challenges, supported moments of celebration, and offered a framework that made the world feel orderly and meaningful. In the growing republic, these beliefs remained steady anchors amid change. Early military structure. In the early days of the republic, Rome's military was not yet the powerful force it would one day become. Instead, it was formed from ordinary citizens who balanced farming, craftsmanship, and family life with their duties as soldiers. This system created a strong connection between military service and civic responsibility. The early Roman army reflected the character of the people, disciplined, steady, and deeply committed to protecting their homes and traditions. Military service began with the census, which recorded citizens and their resources. Based on their wealth, men were placed into different classes that determined the equipment they could afford. Wealthier citizens served as heavily armed infantry, wearing bronze breastplates and carrying large shields. Those with fewer resources formed lighter infantry units, equipped with simpler armor and spears. Though their weapons varied, their dedication remained equal. Each soldier contributed in his own way, creating a balanced and adaptable fighting force. The early Roman army was organized into phalanx-style formations, inspired by Greek tactics. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, creating a solid line of shields and spears. This formation required cooperation and trust. Every movement had to be synchronized. Soldiers trained regularly to maintain this unity, practicing maneuvers that emphasized coordination and endurance. These exercises built not only physical strength, but also a sense of shared purpose. Leadership played a central role. Officers, often drawn from patrician families, guided the troops with calm authority. Their responsibilities included organizing drills, overseeing logistics, and ensuring that troops were equipped for campaigns. Yet even among officers, humility was valued. Leaders were expected to demonstrate courage and fairness, earning the respect of the men they commanded. Marching was a defining feature of Roman military life. Soldiers traveled long distances across varied terrain, rolling hills, river valleys, and rugged paths. Along the way, they set up temporary camps using a precise layout. Each camp had designated areas for sleeping, cooking, storing supplies, and conducting meetings. This structure offered familiarity, turning unfamiliar landscapes into predictable spaces where soldiers could rest and prepare. Campaigns were typically seasonal. When the weather turned cold or fields needed tending, many soldiers returned home to resume their daily lives. This balance between military service and civilian duties kept the army grounded in the reality of community life. Citizens fought not for conquest in this early stage, but to protect their homes and ensure stability for their families. As the Republic grew, so did the army's experience. Each campaign brought new lessons, shaping the tactics and organization that would later define Rome's military strength. But in these early years, the essence of the army lay in its simplicity, a citizen force built on discipline, resilience, and unity. The expansion across Italy. Rome's gradual expansion across the Italian peninsula unfolded quietly, shaped by practical decisions and a sense of steady confidence. Rather than grand ambitions, early Roman leaders focused on maintaining security, supporting allies, and responding carefully to emerging challenges. This measured approach helped the Republic grow without losing the balance that defined its early identity. Rome's relationships with neighboring communities remained central to its strategy. Some towns welcomed cooperation, seeing the value in Rome's stability and organization. Others hesitated, preferring independence or aligning with rival powers. These differing perspectives created a landscape where diplomacy, alliances, and small-scale conflicts all played a role. Rome approached each situation with patience, seeking outcomes that preserved peace while strengthening its position. Geography influenced Rome's progress. The peninsula's hills, valleys, and coastlines created natural boundaries that shaped movement. Roman soldiers and envoys traveled along established paths, stopping at towns nestled in quiet landscapes. These journeys built familiarity with the land and its people, fostering connections that deepened over time. When agreements were made, they often included shared defense, trade arrangements, or cultural exchanges that benefited all involved. Rome valued cooperation, but it also understood the need for preparedness. The early military, composed of citizen soldiers, responded when challenges threatened stability. Conflicts with certain groups, such as the Samnites, tested Rome's resilience. These encounters were not defined by grand conquest narratives, but by gradual adaptation and strategic planning. Each engagement encouraged Rome to refine its tactics, strengthen its infrastructure, and consider long-term implications. As Rome extended its influence, it began to integrate conquered or allied communities in ways that encouraged loyalty. Some towns received partial citizenship, allowing them to share certain rights while maintaining local traditions. Others entered treaties that supported mutual growth. This flexible approach allowed Rome to expand without erasing the identities of those it encountered. People from various regions slowly became part of a broader Roman world, contributing their skills, customs, and perspectives. Infrastructure projects played a key role in unifying the peninsula. Roads, though simple at first, improved travel and communication. They connected distant settlements with Rome, making it easier to transport troops, exchange goods, and share ideas. These roads symbolized Rome's growing presence and hinted at the vast networks that would later span the empire. By the time Rome had secured most of the Italian peninsula, it had done so through a combination of diplomacy, adaptability, and patience. The Republic's strength came from its ability to blend tradition with careful innovation, allowing it to face new challenges without losing sight of its origins. This steady expansion laid the groundwork for Rome's future, a future that would carry the city far beyond the familiar landscapes of Italy. The Mediterranean before the Punic Wars. Before the Punic Wars reshaped history, the Mediterranean was a mosaic of cultures, coastlines, and quiet interactions that blended into a vast network of trade and tradition. The sea itself was a deep blue expanse that carried ships between islands, ports, and distant shores. Winds guided sailors across calm mornings and gentle evenings, where the horizon softened into pale colors. The Mediterranean world moved at a steady rhythm, driven not only by commerce, but also by the simple routines of coastal communities. Along the northern shores lay the lands of the Greeks and Italians, while to the south stretched the rich coastline of North Africa. Farther west, the waters touched the Iberian Peninsula. Scattered across this region were numerous towns, each with unique customs, but linked by shared routes. Traders carried grains, oil, wine, pottery, timber, and metals. These goods moved in quiet cycles that supported the livelihoods of countless families. Conversations between merchants, though brief, wove fragile but persistent bonds between distant peoples. Carthage stood as one of the great centers of this world. Founded by Phoenician settlers, it rose near the shores of what is now Tunisia. Its harbors bustled with activity, filled with ships of various shapes and sizes. Known for its skilled sailors and extensive trade networks, Carthage became a hub of wealth and influence. Its people spoke a Semitic language, worshipped gods inherited from ancient Phoenician tradition, and built structures marked by careful craftsmanship. Rome, still growing at this time, watched the wider Mediterranean with curiosity rather than ambition. The Republic was strong in Italy, but the sea beyond held mysteries and opportunities yet to be explored. Roman farmers tended their fields, craftsmen produced goods for local markets, and senators debated matters of governance. Though Rome was gaining strength, its presence on the global stage was still modest. The Mediterranean felt both near and distant within reach, but not yet central to Roman identity. Other cultures contributed to the vibrant tapestry. Greek city-states dotted the coasts, known for their philosophy, art, and maritime skill. Their colonies in southern Italy and Sicily added layers of influence. To the east lay Egypt, enduring through centuries of tradition, and beyond it, the lands of the Near East, where kingdoms rose and fell in gentle rhythms of history. Each region shaped the Mediterranean's character, offering fragments of language, religion, and technology. Despite their differences, these communities shared a dependence on the sea. Fishermen cast their nets at dawn. Merchants relied on predictable currents and seasonal winds. Families along the coasts gathered for meals flavored by olives, spices, and grains transported from afar. Everything moved through slow, interconnected patterns that reflected the natural pace of life. Before conflict disrupted it, the Mediterranean world felt expansive yet intimate, a vast network sustained by cooperation, exchange, and quiet coexistence. It was within this environment of subtle relationships and gentle interdependence that Rome and Carthage would soon find their paths converging, setting the stage for profound change. The First Punic War. Soft overview. The First Punic War began not as an intentional clash between great powers, but as a gradual entanglement born from local tensions, shifting alliances, and the delicate balance that held the Mediterranean together. At the time, Carthage was a maritime power with centuries of seafaring experience. Rome, though strong on land, had little familiarity with large-scale naval warfare. Their strengths lay in different realms, yet circumstances slowly drew them into confrontation. The island of Sicily played a central role. Its fertile lands and strategic harbors attracted attention from many cultures. Greek settlers, Sicilian communities, and Carthaginian traders all had interests there. Rome, too, maintained diplomatic ties with certain Sicilian cities. When conflicts erupted among local groups, alliances shifted. Rome was asked to intervene in support of allies, while Carthage stepped in to protect its own interests. What began as small, localized disputes gradually expanded into something neither side had fully anticipated. Rome's entry into the conflict marked a turning point. Though inexperienced at sea, the Romans were known for their determination and adaptability. They built ships modeled after a Carthaginian design, reportedly copied from a vessel that had run aground. Their engineers worked tirelessly, constructing fleets with impressive speed. To compensate for their lack of naval skill, The Romans introduced a device known as the corvus, a boarding ramp that allowed soldiers to cross onto enemy ships and fight in familiar, land-based style. Naval battles became cautious dances across the water. Oars sliced through the sea as crews rowed in rhythm, guiding vessels toward strategic positions. The sound of waves against hulls, commands shouted over the wind, and the creaking of wooden masts filled the air. Rome's new tactics surprised Carthaginian commanders. Battles became more unpredictable, shaped by both innovation and the unpredictable nature of the sea. Despite the conflict, life continued quietly in many parts of the Mediterranean. Farmers tended fields, merchants delivered goods, and families gathered for evening meals. The war, though significant, did not immediately overshadow the entire region. It unfolded gradually, year by year, shaping Rome and Carthage in ways that would later define their rivalry. After more than 2 decades of intermittent battles, storms, and shifting fortunes, the First Punic War came to an end. Rome emerged victorious, gaining control of Sicily. This outcome marked Rome's first major step beyond the Italian peninsula, signaling its arrival as a Mediterranean power. Carthage, though still strong, felt the weight of defeat and began to reassess its strategies. The First Punic War reshaped the balance of the region without destroying its underlying rhythms. The sea continued to carry ships, markets remained active, yet the quiet harmony of earlier years had been disrupted. Rome and Carthage, now aware of each other's strengths, would soon face even deeper entanglements that would test both civilizations in unexpected ways. The rise of Hannibal Barca emerged from Carthaginian history as a figure shaped by discipline, heritage, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Born into a prominent family, he grew up during a time of reflection in Carthage, when memories of the First Punic War still lingered. His father, Hamilcar Barca, was a respected general who believed strongly in the restoration of Carthaginian strength. Hannibal spent his early years observing military life, absorbing lessons from seasoned soldiers and leaders who had experienced the struggles of war firsthand. According to tradition, Hannibal's father brought him to an altar when he was young and encouraged him to swear an oath never to show friendship toward Rome. Whether this oath occurred exactly as described is uncertain, but the story conveys the atmosphere of determination that surrounded the boy's upbringing. Hannibal grew up with a sense of duty shaped by both personal loyalty and the broader expectations of Carthaginian society. As he matured, Hannibal demonstrated remarkable intelligence and calm under pressure. He trained in tactics, geography, and leadership skills. His education included lessons in endurance and navigation skills essential for any commander who might lead forces across varied terrain. He accompanied his father and later his brother-in-law Hasdrubal on campaigns in Iberia, a region rich in resources and vital to Carthage's recovery. These experiences exposed Hannibal to diverse cultures and landscapes, expanding his understanding of the wider world. Iberia became a second home to Hannibal. Carthage had established strong influence there, forming alliances with local tribes and building fortified settlements. The rugged mountains, wide rivers, and dense forests offered a natural training ground. Hannibal learned how to navigate unfamiliar territory, communicate with different communities, and adapt to challenging circumstances. His leadership style developed into one marked by calm decision-making and an ability to inspire loyalty. When Hasdrubal was assassinated, the Carthaginian army in Iberia chose Hannibal as their new commander. His appointment reflected not only his abilities, but also the trust he had earned through years of shared hardship. With careful planning, he strengthened Carthage's position on the peninsula, expanding influence while maintaining strategic patience. Rome watched these developments with cautious interest. Although formal boundaries existed set by earlier treaties, tensions simmered quietly. When Hannibal targeted the city of Saguntum, which was allied with Rome, the situation intensified. Conflicts on the edges of empires often reveal deeper frictions, and this was no exception. Hannibal's rise was marked by steady preparation rather than sudden ambition. His combination of discipline, intelligence, and calm determination set the stage for actions that would soon capture the attention of the entire Mediterranean. He was a leader shaped by tradition, loss, resilience, and the belief that Carthage had a place in the world worth defending. Crossing the Alps. Hannibal's decision to cross the Alps remains one of the most memorable undertakings in ancient history, an endeavor shaped by determination, innovation, and the desire to accomplish what others believed impossible. His goal was not simply to confront Rome, but to challenge it in a way that would shift the balance of the entire conflict. To do this, he chose a route few had ever attempted, leading his army across the towering peaks that separated the Italian peninsula from the lands to the north and west. The journey began with careful planning. Hannibal gathered supplies, forged alliances with local tribes, and assembled a diverse force of soldiers, cavalry, and elephants. These elephants, though difficult to maintain, symbolized strength and created a powerful psychological presence. The army moved steadily across Iberia and into Gaul, following river valleys and pathways shaped by centuries of human and natural movement. As they approached the Alps, the terrain grew more dramatic. Valleys narrowed, and jagged mountains rose like stone walls against the sky. Snow-capped peaks glistened in the distance. The air cooled, carrying hints of early winter. Despite the challenges, the soldiers advanced with determination, guided by Hannibal's calm leadership. He spoke to them with reassurance, reminding them of the purpose behind their journey. The ascent into the mountains tested every aspect of the army's resilience. Paths became narrow and steep, forcing soldiers and animals to move carefully along edges where loose stones shifted underfoot. The wind whistled through rocky gaps, carrying cold that numbed hands and faces. Yet moments of beauty softened the journey, sunlight filtering through clouds, mountain streams carving their way through stone, and distant valleys glowing in shades of green and gold. Local tribes living in the highlands sometimes watched the army from the cliffs above. Some offered guidance or supplies in exchange for peace. Others saw opportunity in attacking a foreign force, navigating such difficult ground. Hannibal met each situation with a blend of caution and respect, negotiating where possible and defending when necessary. His awareness of both terrain and human behavior played a crucial role in keeping the army together. At the highest points of the journey, the landscape opened into vast panoramic views of the world below. Snow stretched across the peaks, and clouds drifted at eye level. The silence felt immense, broken only by footsteps and the distant echoes of movement. Soldiers pressed onward, encouraged by the knowledge that the descent would bring them closer to their goal. The descent was no easier. Narrow trails required careful coordination, and sudden weather changes created slippery conditions. Yet the sight of the plains of Italy eventually appeared a patchwork of lands that signaled the end of the mountain challenge. When the army reached the foothills, weary but alive, Hannibal had accomplished a remarkable feat. His crossing of the Alps demonstrated not only strategic brilliance, but also the power of determination and unity. Rome's reaction to Hannibal's arrival on Italian soil was marked by a blend of surprise, caution, and resolve. News of his crossing spread through the Republic with quiet urgency. People who had long believed the Alps to be an insurmountable barrier now understood that the conflict had entered a new phase. Hannibal's presence in Italy challenged assumptions about security and demanded thoughtful, steady response. The Senate convened to discuss the situation, gathering in chambers where marble floors echoed softly with each step. Senators debated strategies, weighing immediate action against long-term planning. Their discussions reflected the Republic's character: disciplined, deliberate, and attentive to the lessons of history. Though Hannibal's accomplishment was extraordinary, Rome trusted its structure, experience, and ability to adapt. Military preparations began quietly but decisively. Commanders assembled troops from across Italy, organizing legions that reflected Rome's tradition of disciplined citizen soldiers. Training intensified, weapons were inspected, and supplies were gathered. Roads filled with soldiers marching in organized formations toward strategic positions. The sound of steady footsteps, metal armor, and coordinated movement sent a message of readiness. Rome's leaders adopted a cautious approach. They recognized that Hannibal's journey had tested his army, but they did not underestimate his capabilities. Rather than rushing into confrontation, Roman generals studied the terrain, evaluated potential battle sites, and prepared defenses designed to protect both people and resources. This measured strategy reflected Rome's understanding of the broader conflict. Success required patience and foresight, not impulsive action. Citizens across the Republic adjusted their routines. Markets continued to operate, children attended lessons, and families gathered for meals. Yet an underlying awareness persisted, a quiet understanding that the coming months would bring uncertainty. Still, the Roman spirit remained steady. People found comfort in familiar traditions, rituals, and the shared belief that the Republic had endured challenges before. Allies of Rome were notified and asked for support. Messages traveled along roads and across rivers, carried by riders who moved swiftly through the changing landscapes. These communications strengthened bonds that had been built over generations. Communities across Italy responded with cooperation, providing additional troops, supplies, and strategic positions. Their participation reflected Rome's ability to foster unity among diverse groups. As Hannibal advanced through Italy, Roman commanders maintained vigilance. They observed his movements carefully, aiming to understand his strategies without falling into traps. Skirmishes occurred, but Rome avoided committing all its forces at once. This approach frustrated Hannibal at times, as he hoped Rome would engage directly on terms favorable to him. Through steady preparation, Rome demonstrated the strength of its institutions and the resilience of its people. The Republic did not seek glory in hasty battles. Instead, it relied on patience, unity, and thoughtful planning to navigate the challenges ahead. Rome's response marked the beginning of a long and complex struggle, one that would test both sides and shape the future of the Mediterranean world. End of the Hannibalic era. The long struggle between Rome and Hannibal unfolded across many years, marked by battles, maneuvers, and shifting fortunes. Yet even as the conflict continued, both sides understood that the war could not last indefinitely. The Mediterranean world changed slowly around them. New alliances formed, resources shifted, and the pressures of prolonged conflict began to weigh on Carthage. Hannibal's presence in Italy remained formidable, but maintaining his army far from home proved increasingly difficult. Rome, through perseverance and careful strategy, gradually regained stability. Its leaders adapted their approach, learning from earlier encounters and shaping tactics that avoided unnecessary risk. The Republic focused on preserving strength rather than pursuing dramatic victories. This patience allowed Rome to rebuild, reorganize, and eventually shift the balance of the war. As years passed, attention turned toward Africa, Carthage's homeland. Roman forces advanced there, urging Hannibal to return and defend his city. The call home was not taken lightly. After so many years in Italy, Hannibal understood the challenges awaiting him. Yet he also recognized his responsibility to Carthage and prepared to depart. The final confrontation took place near Zama, where Roman and Carthaginian forces faced each other under open skies. The battle, led on the Roman side by Scipio Africanus, reflected years of experience and adaptation. Despite Hannibal's enduring skill and leadership, the Carthaginian army struggled against Rome's disciplined formations and strategic adjustments. The outcome marked a turning point. Rome emerged victorious, and the war drew to a close. After the defeat, Carthage was required to accept terms that limited its military strength and placed financial burdens upon it. Hannibal, though respected, found his role constrained by political pressures at home. Eventually, he departed Carthage to avoid being handed over to Rome, continuing his life in exile. His later years were spent offering counsel to foreign rulers, always carrying with him the memories of the long struggle. The end of the Hannibalic era brought relief to Rome. The Republic had endured one of its greatest challenges and emerged stronger. Citizens returned to familiar routines, fields were cultivated again, and markets regained their usual rhythm. Yet the memories of the war lingered. Stories of bravery, hardship, and perseverance became part of Rome's identity, shaping how future generations understood duty and resilience. Carthage, though weakened, remained a vibrant city. Its harbors continued to host merchants, and its people maintained traditions shaped by centuries of history. But its influence had shifted, and Rome now held a more prominent place in the Mediterranean world. The conclusion of this era marked the end of a significant chapter in ancient history. The quiet strength of Rome and the determined spirit of Hannibal stood as reminders of how conflict can reshape entire civilizations. Though the war had been long and challenging, the Mediterranean gradually returned to its gentle rhythm, carrying forward the lessons learned across both shores. The fall of Carthage. In the years following the Second Punic War, tensions between Rome and Carthage simmered quietly beneath the surface. Though Carthage had accepted strict limitations, suspicions remained strong in the Roman Senate. To many Romans, Carthage still represented an unpredictable presence, a city whose history of maritime skill and resilient spirit made it difficult to ignore. Yet Carthage itself had turned inward, focusing on trade, rebuilding, and adapting to new constraints with a quiet determination. As Carthage rebuilt economically, its harbors grew busy again. Merchants transported goods across the Mediterranean, and local markets regained vitality. The city no longer held the military power it once possessed, but its economic recovery stirred unease in Rome. Some Roman leaders argued that Carthage's resurgence could eventually threaten the Republic's expanding interests. With each debate, the idea of confronting Carthage once more gained momentum. A dispute between Carthage and Numidia eventually provided Rome with justification to intervene. Carthage defended its borders against Numidian encroachment, an action Rome considered a violation of the peace treaty. Though Carthaginian leaders attempted diplomacy, the situation escalated. Rome demanded that Carthage dismantle its defenses and even relocate inland away from the sea that had defined its identity for centuries. These demands were impossible for Carthage to accept. When negotiations faltered, Rome prepared for war. Carthaginian citizens gathered in public squares to discuss their options, sensing the impending conflict. Families fortified their homes, craftsmen produced weapons, and elders shared memories of earlier battles. Despite their limitations, the people felt a quiet resolve to defend their city. Roman forces eventually arrived outside Carthage's walls. What followed was not a swift victory, but a slow siege. The city, surrounded by strong fortifications, resisted with determination. Months turned into years as both sides endured countless hardships. Inside the walls, Carthaginians rationed supplies and worked tirelessly to maintain morale. Even in difficulty, their spirit remained steady. Rome, patient and methodical, continued the siege with disciplined persistence. Engineers built siege towers and dug trenches, slowly tightening the ring around the city. Day by day, the pressure grew. Eventually, the defenses faltered, and Roman forces entered Carthage. The final moments were filled not with chaos, but with heavy silence, as the weight of the city's long history seemed to hold the air still. When the struggle ended, Carthage was left in ruins. Rome ordered the city dismantled, its walls leveled, and its harbor closed. Yet even in destruction, the memory of Carthage endured. It remained etched into the stories and consciousness of both victors and survivors. For Rome, the fall of Carthage marked a turning point. The Republic now held unchallenged influence across the Western Mediterranean. With Carthage gone, Rome stepped confidently into a new era, one marked not only by strength, but also by the responsibility of managing vast territories and diverse peoples. The world had shifted, and Rome stood at its center. Greece and the East. As Rome expanded its influence westward, its attention turned increasingly toward the Greek world and the regions that stretched across the eastern Mediterranean. These lands had long been centers of culture, philosophy, and vibrant trade. Their cities shimmered with marble temples, bustling agoras, and theaters filled with stories and music. The air carried both the echoes of ancient legends and the lively rhythms of daily life. Rome's interactions with Greece began through alliances and diplomatic exchanges. Many Greek city-states, facing their own internal conflicts or external threats, welcomed Roman involvement. Others viewed Rome's growing presence with caution, sensing the shift in power dynamics. But early encounters were marked by mutual respect. Romans admired Greek art, literature, and knowledge, often seeking to learn from the rich intellectual traditions that flourished there. Political circumstances eventually drew Rome into deeper involvement. The Hellenistic kingdom's successors to the empire Alexander the Great had once ruled faced rising tensions and shifting alliances. Macedonia, once a powerful force, found itself in conflict with neighboring states and struggling to maintain stability. When these disputes spilled into the wider region, Rome stepped in, initially as an arbiter, then as a protector, and finally as a dominant force. Military engagements were steady and methodical. Roman commanders approached each conflict with a blend of discipline and patience, carefully studying enemy formations and terrain. Battles unfolded in open plains, rolling hills, and near ancient cities whose names carried echoes of myth. The Romans, accustomed to the structured legionary system, gradually overcame the varied tactics of the Hellenistic armies. As Rome secured victories, its influence spread. Cities entered treaties that aligned them with the Republic, often in exchange for autonomy and protection. Rome presented itself not as a conqueror, but as a stabilizer, though its growing authority became increasingly evident. The Senate dispatched governors and envoys to oversee administrative affairs, ensuring that alliances remained steady and that local disputes did not escalate. Despite these political changes, Rome appreciated the cultural richness of the Greek world. Scholars, artists, and educators traveled to Rome, bringing with them knowledge of philosophy, science, and literature. The works of thinkers such as Plato, Aristotle, and Sophocles found new audiences. Roman families began to adopt Greek tutors to educate their children, blending traditions in ways that enriched both societies. In the Eastern Mediterranean, Rome also encountered diverse cultures, including the powerful kingdom of Syria and the enduring civilization of Egypt. Diplomatic missions and trade ventures connected Rome to these regions, offering glimpses of distant customs and ideas. Over time, these relationships deepened, further extending Rome's presence. By the end of its involvement in Greece and the East, Rome had become a central figure in a world that stretched far beyond the Italian peninsula. The Republic now navigated a landscape filled with cultural diversity, political complexity, and new responsibilities. As Rome embraced these challenges, it grew not only in power, but also in understanding, drawing inspiration from the civilizations it encountered. Culture of a growing empire. As Rome expanded its reach across the Mediterranean, its culture evolved in ways that reflected both its ancient traditions and its new interactions with the wider world. The growing empire brought together people from diverse backgrounds: Italians, Greeks, Iberians, North Africans, and many others, each contributing elements that enriched Roman society. This blending of influences created a cultural landscape that was vibrant, dynamic, and steadily evolving. Public life took on greater complexity. Forums became bustling centers where citizens gathered to discuss politics, exchange goods, or observe public ceremonies. Statues, inscriptions, and architectural structures began to reflect Rome's expanding identity. Triumphal arches honored victories, while new temples integrated both traditional gods and the deities of conquered regions. These buildings, crafted with care, stood as reminders of Rome's achievements and the unity of its people. Art flourished. Roman sculptors drew inspiration from Greek techniques, shaping marble into lifelike forms that captured both realism and idealized beauty. Mosaics decorated homes and public spaces, depicting scenes from mythology, daily life, and nature. Colors and patterns flowed across floors and walls, adding warmth and character to interiors. Pottery, metalwork, and textiles also grew more refined as artisans adopted new methods introduced through trade and cultural exchange. Education expanded as well. Families, especially those of higher status, sought tutors knowledgeable in literature, mathematics, and philosophy. Greek educators played a significant role, bringing with them teachings that had endured through centuries. Children learned to read and write using wax tablets, while advanced students studied rhetoric, history, and the principles of ethical conduct. This focus on learning helped shape a generation of leaders capable of navigating the complexities of an expanding world. Religion adapted to new influences. While the Romans remained devoted to their traditional gods, they showed openness to foreign deities and rituals. Temples dedicated to Egyptian, Greek, and Eastern deities appeared alongside older sanctuaries. Festivals grew more elaborate, blending local customs with new traditions. These celebrations offered moments of unity, allowing people from different cultures to share in the joy of collective gatherings. Daily life reflected this cultural diversity. Markets offered goods from distant regions, spices from the East, fabrics from Egypt, wines from Greece, and ceramics from Iberia. These items brought new flavors, textures, and experiences into Roman homes. Families experimented with recipes and customs borrowed from their neighbors, creating a culinary landscape that was rich and varied. The expansion of the empire also encouraged advancements in engineering. Aqueducts carried fresh water into cities, improving sanitation and public health. Roads extended farther across the landscape, connecting distant settlements with smooth pathways that eased travel and trade. Bridges, arches, and public baths showcased Rome's growing capability to shape its environment with thoughtful design. Through these developments, Roman culture grew into a reflection of its empire, diverse, connected, and continually evolving. The blending of traditions did not erase Rome's identity. Instead, it strengthened it, creating a society capable of embracing new ideas while honoring its origins. Roads, trade, and quiet prosperity. As Rome's influence expanded across the Mediterranean world, the Republic understood that lasting stability required more than victories or treaties, it required connection. This understanding shaped one of the most profound developments in Roman history, the creation of a vast network of roads. These roads quietly stitched the empire together, linking distant towns, ports, and settlements into a unified landscape. The roads were not just pathways for armies. They became channels for trade, communication, and cultural exchange. Construction began with careful planning. Roman engineers surveyed terrain, studying slopes, soil, and natural obstacles. They selected routes that balanced practicality with efficiency. Roads were built layer by layer, beginning with leveled ground, followed by stones, gravel, and paving blocks. This structure created solid surfaces that endured through seasons of rain, heat, and daily use. Many of these roads remained functional for centuries, a testament to Rome's commitment to durability. Merchants traveled along these roads, carrying goods that reflected the diversity of the expanding empire. Olive oil from Iberia, grain from North Africa, wine from Italy, marble from Greece, and spices from the east moved at a steady pace toward destinations near and far. Caravans of carts and pack animals passed through valleys, over hills, and along coastal routes, bringing with them stories, news, and customs from different lands. Trade enriched local markets and allowed families to enjoy products that once felt exotic or distant. Travel became safer and more predictable. Inns appeared along major routes, offering food and shelter for weary travelers. Milestones placed at regular intervals helped people measure distance and plan their journeys. These simple details created a sense of reliability that encouraged movement and connection. Soldiers, traders, officials, and ordinary citizens all benefited from the network, contributing to a shared sense of belonging across regions. With improved travel came quiet prosperity. Towns located along major routes grew quickly. Markets became livelier, filled with goods from across the empire. Craftsmen saw increased demand for their skills, creating pottery, textiles, tools, and ornaments that reflected both local traditions and foreign influences. Agricultural communities found expanded opportunities to sell their harvests, allowing families to prosper through consistent, steady growth. Trade also strengthened relationships among regions. Agreements between cities ensured that roads remained safe, well-maintained, and accessible. Taxes collected from merchants supported public works and community services. These systems helped maintain balance and stability, even during times of political change. As people traveled more frequently, ideas flowed alongside goods. Languages blended, customs mixed, and cultural traditions spread throughout the empire. Roman citizens became familiar with stories, foods, and practices from distant places. This exchange enriched daily life and fostered a deeper sense of unity among diverse communities. The roads of Rome were more than stone pathways, they were lifelines that supported prosperity, cooperation, and connection. They represented the empire's ability to build not only structures, but relationships. Through these networks, Rome created a world where distance felt smaller and where the rhythms of life flowed with gentle, steady purpose. Rome's architecture begins to change as Rome transformed into a vast Mediterranean power. Its architecture evolved in ways that reflected new ambitions, influences, and needs. Buildings that once served small communities grew into monumental structures capable of accommodating larger populations, complex ceremonies, and diverse public gatherings. The city's skyline shifted gradually, blending traditional forms with innovative designs inspired by cultures Rome encountered during its expansion. Early Roman architecture was practical and modest. Homes were built of wood and clay, temples followed simple layouts, and public buildings served basic administrative purposes. But as trade flourished and Rome interacted with Greece, Egypt, and the East, inspiration flowed into the city. Greek influence, in particular, produced new styles, columns, symmetry, and the use of marble. These elements enriched Roman design, adding elegance while preserving the Republic's preference for stability and function. Temples became larger and more intricate. Builders used stone instead of wood, creating enduring structures that stood upon raised platforms. Columns lined entrances, and sculpted pediments depicted scenes from mythology and civic life. These temples were not just places of worship, they were symbols of Rome's connection to tradition, culture, and the divine. Public spaces grew in importance. The Forum, once a modest gathering place, expanded into a vibrant center of daily activity. New basilicas appeared, long, rectangular halls used for legal matters, business transactions, and public meetings. Their high ceilings and spacious interiors created environments where voices carried gently, allowing citizens to conduct affairs in calm, orderly settings. Engineering innovations shaped the city in remarkable ways. The development of concrete allowed builders to construct domes, vaults, and arches with greater flexibility. These forms created open interiors that were both functional and visually impressive. Aqueducts brought fresh water into urban areas, flowing across valleys and landscapes through graceful arches that balanced practicality with beauty. Public baths became central to daily life, offering places for relaxation, conversation, and community connection. As wealth increased, homes of the elite grew larger, featuring courtyards, columns, and decorated walls. Mosaics made from tiny colored stones portrayed nature, legends, and scenes of leisure. Though luxurious, these homes also maintained a sense of harmony that reflected Roman values of balance and modest comfort. Roman architecture also extended to conquered regions. New cities and colonies included theaters, temples, markets, and roads designed with Roman planning principles. These projects symbolized the Republic's presence, offering familiar spaces to Roman settlers while integrating local materials and styles. Through these changes, architecture became a language one that expressed Rome's identity, achievements, and vision for the future. The city grew not through rapid transformation, but through thoughtful additions that respected tradition while embracing new possibilities. Each building contributed to a sense of order and unity, creating an environment where daily life could unfold in calm, meaningful rhythms. A world connected by Roman influence. By the height of the Republic's Mediterranean expansion, Rome presided over a world connected in ways that earlier generations could scarcely imagine. The empire's influence extended across continents, stitching together diverse cultures, landscapes, and traditions into a shared network of communication, commerce, and governance. This interconnected world moved with a quiet, reliable rhythm that reflected Rome's steady leadership. Travelers could journey from the northern reaches of Italy to the shores of North Africa, or from the mountains of Iberia to the islands of Greece using well-maintained routes. These pathways made the world feel smaller. Soldiers marched between distant provinces. Officials traveled to administer justice. Merchants carried textiles, pottery, spices, and metals to markets far from their origins. Along these routes, People exchanged greetings, stories, and experiences that blended cultures into a broader community. Local identities remained strong, but Roman influence provided a framework that encouraged cooperation. Laws introduced consistency across regions. Measurements, currencies, and weights became more standardized, simplifying trade and reducing confusion. Cities adopted Roman-style forums, theaters, and baths, creating familiar spaces where citizens could gather, relax, and participate in public life. This sense of shared structure helped maintain stability, even during moments of political uncertainty. Cultural exchange deepened as well. People in one region became aware of customs from another, new methods of farming, styles of clothing, and forms of entertainment. Philosophers shared ideas across borders. Poets composed works that reflected the blending of traditions, and artisans experimented with designs inspired by far-off places. This fusion made the Mediterranean feel like a living, breathing tapestry woven from countless threads. Despite its vastness, the Roman world maintained a steady pulse. Ships crossed the seas carrying not only goods but also letters, treaties, and travelers seeking opportunity. Ports echoed with the sound of waves and voices speaking different languages. Markets in distant cities sold similar items, creating shared experiences across regions. People felt connected by the roads they walked, the laws they respected, and the stories they shared. In rural areas, life followed familiar patterns. Farmers harvested crops, shepherds guided their flocks, and families gathered for quiet evening meals. Though they lived far from Rome, they benefited from the peace and stability that Roman influence brought. Trade routes provided access to goods they might otherwise never see, while Roman governance offered a sense of security. Across the Mediterranean, Rome's presence encouraged unity without erasing diversity. Cultures remained distinct, yet they participated in a larger system that supported communication and cooperation. This balance allowed the world to flourish, creating a period of prosperity that shaped the lives of millions. As Rome continued to grow, its influence extended beyond territory. It reached into the hearts, routines, and imaginations of people across the Mediterranean. A shared world had emerged, defined not by uniformity, but by connection, resilience, and the quiet confidence that comes from living within a system that valued stability and structure. The Gracchi brothers. As Rome expanded its territories and influence, the social landscape at home began to show slow but significant signs of strain. Wealth flowed into the Republic from conquered lands, but it did not reach all citizens equally. Large estates grew in the countryside, controlled by influential families who prospered from new opportunities. Meanwhile, many small farmers struggled. Wars had taken them far from their fields, and when they returned, they found their lands neglected or absorbed by wealthier neighbors. These tensions created quiet but persistent pressure within the Republic. In this setting, the Gracchi brothers Tiberius and Gaius emerged as voices for reform. Born into a respected family, they had received careful education and were raised in an environment that valued public service. Their mother, Cornelia, was admired for her wisdom and character, and her influence helped shape their sense of duty. Both brothers believed deeply in supporting ordinary citizens and addressing the inequalities that had grown over time. Tiberius Gracchus was the first to act. Elected as tribune, he proposed distributing public land more fairly among poorer citizens. His plan aimed to give families the ability to farm again, restoring livelihoods and strengthening the Republic. His speeches, delivered in calm but passionate tones, resonated with many who felt overlooked. However, his proposals challenged powerful interests. Debates in the Senate grew tense as discussions shifted from policy to concerns about influence. Despite resistance, Tiberius pressed forward. His actions were rooted in a desire to restore balance, not to disrupt tradition. Yet the conflict escalated in ways he had not intended. Misunderstandings, political maneuvering, and rising tensions eventually led to his death, a moment that left many Romans unsettled. The calm fabric of daily life felt briefly shaken, and citizens reflected on how deeply internal divisions could run. Years later, Gaius Gracchus continued his brother's efforts. Like Tiberius, he sought to address social and economic issues. He worked on laws that improved grain distribution, supported military veterans, and expanded opportunities for citizenship. His reforms reached further than his brothers, and for a time, they gained support from both the public and political leaders. Gaius was known for his eloquence, his thoughtful approach to governance, and his ability to speak to the needs of different groups. But opposition remained strong. As debates intensified, the political climate once again became strained. Gaius faced increasing pressure from those who feared his influence, and his life, too, ended in turmoil. The deaths of the Gracchi brothers left a lasting impression on the Republic. Their efforts had revealed deep issues that required attention and thoughtful solutions. In the years that followed, Romans looked back on the Gracchi with a mixture of admiration and reflection. Their attempts at reform highlighted the need for balance in an expanding society. The quiet struggles of ordinary citizens, once overshadowed, now carried greater weight in public discourse. Though the Gracchi brothers did not see the outcomes they hoped for, their legacy persisted as a reminder of the importance of fairness, empathy, and steady reform. Social and economic shifts. As Rome grew larger and more powerful, its internal structure changed in ways that gradually shaped the daily lives of its citizens. The flow of wealth and resources from conquered lands brought prosperity to the Republic, but it also reshaped the social fabric. Large estates known as latifundia expanded across the countryside, worked by enslaved laborers captured in military campaigns. These estates produced goods on a scale that smaller farmers struggled to match, creating an imbalance that became increasingly evident. Many rural families found themselves displaced. Unable to compete, they sold their land or were forced to abandon it. Seeking opportunity, they moved to Rome and other growing cities, where they hoped to find work. As more people arrived, the cities became denser and livelier. Narrow streets filled with vendors, artisans, and small workshops. The hum of daily activity echoed through neighborhoods, creating an atmosphere of constant movement. Though some found new livelihoods, many discovered that city life brought its own challenges. Jobs were not always plentiful, and competition among workers could be fierce. Overcrowded housing created conditions that were sometimes uncomfortable or unsafe. Families lived close together in multi-story buildings where walls were thin and stairways narrow. The warmth of community offered comfort, but the realities of urban life required resilience. The growing divide between wealthy and poor became increasingly noticeable. Wealthy families lived in spacious homes with courtyards, decorated rooms, and carefully tended gardens. Their lives were marked by luxury, occasion, and political influence. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens navigated a world of uncertainty, supported by strong social networks, but lacking consistent opportunities. These shifts also influenced political dynamics. Senators and influential leaders gained even more wealth through trade, land ownership, and administrative roles in the provinces. Their decisions carried greater impact as the Republic expanded. Some leaders recognized the need to address inequality, while others focused primarily on their own interests. The tension between public duty and personal gain quietly shaped debates within the Senate. Economic changes extended beyond Rome itself. Provinces contributed taxes, goods, and labor to the Republic. These contributions created interdependence, but also introduced concerns about fairness, representation, and cultural identity. Local communities adapted to Roman governance, blending their traditions with those of the empire. Markets across the Mediterranean reflected these changes through an increasing variety of products and styles. Despite challenges, Roman society remained resilient. Families continued to gather for meals, visit baths, celebrate festivals, and honor their traditions. Religious ceremonies offered comfort, reminding people of continuity amid change. Public spaces, forums, temples, and markets served as meeting points where citizens could share news and support one another. The social and economic shifts of this period were not sudden. They unfolded gradually, shaped by countless decisions, events, and interactions. Together, these changes revealed a republic in transition, a society balancing growth with stability, opportunity with challenge. The tensions that emerged would eventually influence the course of Roman politics, setting the stage for further transformations in the years ahead. Marius and his reforms. As Rome faced increasing pressures both internally and abroad, the Republic turned to new leaders capable of navigating the challenges of a growing empire. Among them was Gaius Marius, a commander whose career left a lasting mark on Rome's military traditions. Born outside the traditional aristocracy, Marius rose through the ranks through determination, discipline, and exceptional leadership. His story reflected the changing nature of the Republic, where ability could sometimes outweigh ancestry. During this period, Rome found itself engaged in conflicts that demanded large numbers of soldiers. Traditional recruitment relied on property-owning citizens who could afford their own equipment. However, as economic shifts strained these populations, fewer people met the requirements for service. Marius recognized the need to adapt. His reforms opened military enlistment to citizens who did not own land, allowing the Republic to draw from a broader pool of recruits. These changes transformed the Roman army. Soldiers who had previously been excluded from military service now found steady work, training, and a sense of purpose. The state provided equipment, ensuring that each soldier had the tools needed for battle. This standardization improved efficiency and unity. Camps became more organized, training more consistent, and legions more disciplined. Marius also reorganized the structure of the army. He grouped soldiers into cohorts divisions that allowed for greater flexibility and coordinated tactics. This arrangement enabled commanders to adapt more swiftly to battlefield conditions. The cohort system became a hallmark of Roman military organization, remaining influential for generations. Beyond structural changes, Marius inspired loyalty among his troops. Soldiers saw him as approachable, fair, and dedicated. He shared hardships with them, marched alongside them, and rewarded their efforts. This bond strengthened morale and created legions that were not only skilled but deeply committed. However, these reforms subtly shifted the relationship between soldiers and the state. With rewards and land grants tied to their commanders, soldiers grew more loyal to the generals who led them than to the Senate that governed them. This shift was quiet at first, but its long-term effects would shape political developments in unexpected ways. Marius's military successes brought him recognition and multiple consulships, yet his rise also sparked rivalries, particularly with Lucius Cornelius Sulla, another ambitious commander. Their disagreements, influenced by personal ambition and political tensions, hinted at the instability emerging within the Republic. Despite these challenges, Marius's reforms strengthened Rome's military capabilities at a time when adaptability was essential. His innovations allowed the Republic to respond more effectively to threats and support its expanding territories. The new army he shaped became a powerful force that carried Roman influence across continents. In the broader narrative of Rome, Marius stands as a figure of transformation, someone who bridged tradition and change. His reforms addressed immediate needs, improved military effectiveness, and redefined what it meant to serve the Republic. Though not without consequences, his legacy reflected the complexities of a society striving to remain strong amid growing pressures. Sulla's march. As tensions grew within the Republic, new rivalries emerged that reflected deeper issues in Roman politics. Among these rivalries, the conflict between Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla became one of the most defining. Their disagreements were not only personal, but symbolic of the shifting balance between military influence, political authority, and the fragile unity of the state. Sulla, born into a patrician but modest family, rose to prominence through a blend of determination, diplomacy, and military skill. His rise paralleled the changing nature of Roman leadership. While serving as a commander, Sulla demonstrated a calm but strategic mind. He formed strong relationships with allies, negotiated carefully with foreign powers, and achieved victories that earned him respect. Yet his growing influence increasingly brought him into conflict with Marius, whose own career had reshaped Rome's military structure. Their rivalry intensified as each sought recognition, power, and control over important commands. The turning point came during the conflict against Mithridates, the king of Pontus. The Senate initially assigned the campaign to Sulla, acknowledging his strategic insight. However, political maneuvering led to the decision being reversed, granting Marius the command instead. This change ignited tensions that had simmered beneath the surface for years. Sulla's supporters saw the reversal as unjust, while Marius's allies viewed the decision as necessary to protect the Republic. Faced with losing the opportunity to lead a major campaign, Sulla made a choice that would leave a lasting mark on Roman history. In a move that shocked the Republic, he marched his legions toward Rome, breaking long-standing tradition that soldiers were never to bring arms into the city. This march, though not accompanied by widespread destruction, symbolized a profound shift. It revealed how military loyalty had begun to overshadow civilian authority. As Sulla entered the city, many citizens watched with unease. The familiar streets, usually filled with merchants and families, now echoed with the footsteps of disciplined soldiers. Sulla insisted that his actions were meant to restore order, not create chaos. He reasserted the Senate's decision and prepared to lead the campaign against Mithridates. Yet the memory of his march lingered, raising concerns about how easily military power could influence political outcomes. After completing his campaign abroad, Sulla returned to Rome once more. This time, he assumed the role of dictator, a position traditionally used only during moments of extreme emergency. Sulla introduced reforms aimed at strengthening the Senate and limiting the powers of tribunes, whom he believed had grown too influential. His measures sought to restore a balance he felt had been lost, though many viewed them as overly restrictive. Throughout this period, ordinary citizens continued their daily routines, tending shops, gathering in markets, and honoring household rituals. Yet the atmosphere carried a quiet awareness that the Republic had entered a new phase. Sulla's march had revealed the fragile boundaries between authority, tradition, and ambition. Though the city eventually returned to its familiar rhythms, the events of these years left a lasting impression on Rome's collective memory. Life during political unrest. Amid the political upheavals that marked the later years of the Republic, daily life for ordinary Romans continued with a mixture of resilience and quiet adaptation. The people of Rome had long grown accustomed to change, yet the disruptions brought by rivalries, reforms, and shifting power dynamics added new layers of uncertainty. Still, families found ways to maintain structure, comfort, and a sense of community, even as the city experienced periods of unrest. Markets remained central to daily routines. Vendors set up stalls at dawn, displaying goods ranging from fresh produce to pottery, textiles, and small crafted items. Citizens moved through the crowded spaces, exchanging greetings and sharing news of political developments. While some discussions carried hints of concern, many preferred to focus on familiar tasks, preparing meals, tending workshops, or supporting their households. The continuous flow of trade provided stability, reminding people that life continued despite the turbulence. In residential neighborhoods, families gathered around hearths for evening meals, finding solace in tradition. Conversations often included reflections on recent events, but they were balanced by stories, laughter, and the reassurance of shared routines. Children played in narrow streets, chasing one another or inventing simple games. Their innocence brought moments of lightness that softened the atmosphere, offering small reminders of normalcy. Public spaces such as baths and forums remained hubs of social interaction. Bathhouses provided places for relaxation, conversation, and rejuvenation. Citizens immersed themselves in warm waters, discussed matters of the day, and enjoyed brief escapes from the uncertainties outside. The forum, though filled with political debates, also hosted merchants, performers, and travelers who carried stories from distant parts of the empire. These interactions kept the city connected to the broader world, offering perspectives beyond the immediate turmoil. Religious practices continued to offer comfort. Families maintained small household shrines where they placed offerings, lit lamps, and whispered prayers. Public ceremonies honored the gods and sought their favor for the city's well-being. Festivals brought communities together with music, feasts, and quiet celebrations that strengthened bonds and provided emotional relief. Yet signs of unrest were visible. Patrols moved through certain neighborhoods to maintain order. Meetings of political groups grew more frequent, and rumors traveled quickly. Some citizens worried about food supplies, disruptions to trade, or the possibility of conflict within the city itself. Others held on to hope that leaders would restore harmony through compromise and thoughtful governance. Despite these concerns, many Romans showed remarkable adaptability. Craftsmen continued to create goods, farmers delivered produce, and teachers guided young students. Life unfolded with a sense of continuous forward movement, shaped not only by politics, but by the enduring spirit of the people. Their resilience reflected centuries of tradition, reminding future generations that even in times of challenge, the heart of Rome remained steady. These years of political unrest did not define daily life, but wove themselves into its fabric. Through perseverance, community, and the quiet strength of ordinary routines, Romans navigated a changing world with determination and dignity. The Republic grows fragile as Rome continued its expansion and political tensions intensified. The stability of the Republic gradually weakened. The institutions that had guided Rome for centuries began to struggle under the weight of new challenges: economic inequality, ambitious leaders, shifting loyalties, and the complexities of governing vast territories. These pressures accumulated slowly, creating an atmosphere where uncertainty blended with familiarity, shaping a society on the edge of transformation. One of the most significant changes was the imbalance of power among Rome's governing bodies. The Senate, once a stable source of guidance, faced internal divisions. Influential families competed for dominance, forming alliances that shifted with the political winds. These rivalries made it difficult to achieve consensus on important matters, and decisions often reflected personal interests rather than the common good. Military loyalty also shifted. Soldiers, many of whom had joined the army through reforms introduced by leaders like Marius, developed strong attachments to their commanders. Generals who rewarded their troops with land, wealth, and recognition became central figures in their lives. This loyalty, though understandable, weakened the connection between soldiers and the broader republic. Armies became instruments not only of national defense, but also of individual ambition. Economic pressures continued to influence society. Wealth concentrated among the elite, while many citizens struggled to find stable work or maintain their households. Crowded urban areas reflected both opportunity and hardship. Families navigated the narrow streets of Rome with resilience, carrying out daily tasks while adapting to changing circumstances. Though life remained vibrant and familiar, an undercurrent of concern touched conversations in markets, baths, and public gatherings. The expansion of the empire added further complexity. Provinces required administration, resources, and military oversight. Corruption occasionally infiltrated local governments, causing frustration among communities far from Rome. Communication across vast distances took time, making it challenging to address issues promptly. Yet these regions continued to contribute taxes, goods, and cultural richness to the Republic, creating intricate relationships that both strengthened and strained the system. Despite growing fragility, Rome's spirit endured. Families continued to celebrate festivals, honor traditions, and gather for shared meals. Public spaces remained active with debates, performances, and gatherings that reflected the city's dynamic energy. The people's resilience was rooted in their deep connection to Roman identity, an identity formed through generations of experience, struggle, and shared values. However, the cracks within the Republic grew more visible with each passing year. Political violence became more frequent. Disagreements escalated beyond words, leading to moments of conflict that alarmed citizens who longed for stability. Leaders sought power through both legal and unconventional means, shaping a new political landscape that felt unfamiliar to many. As the Republic grew increasingly fragile, it became clear that Rome stood at a crossroads. The foundations remained strong, but the pressures pushing against them were undeniable. These years marked the beginning of a transition, one that would eventually transform the Republic into something entirely new. Through calm persistence and reflection, Rome moved forward, carrying both the weight of its past and the uncertainty of its future. The rise of Julius Caesar. In the final generations of the Roman Republic, few figures emerged with as much presence, influence, and enduring legacy as Julius Caesar. His rise unfolded during a time when Rome was experiencing both remarkable growth and increasing instability. Political rivalries, economic imbalances, and shifting alliances created an atmosphere where ambition found many pathways. Caesar, shaped by lineage and determination, stepped into this world with a calm confidence and a vision of possibility. Born into the Julian family, Caesar carried with him a heritage linked to ancient traditions and respected ancestry. Though not among the wealthiest families, the Julians possessed deep roots in Roman history, and this provided Caesar with a sense of identity and purpose. His early years were marked by study, training, and quiet observation of political life. He learned the rhythms of public speaking, the values of Roman society, and the importance of building strong connections. As Caesar matured, he demonstrated a remarkable ability to navigate the complex environment of Roman politics. He formed alliances with influential figures, offered support where needed, and maintained a calm, persuasive presence in public settings. His charm and eloquence allowed him to gain followers, while his strategic mind helped him identify opportunities that others overlooked. Caesar's early political career included service as a military officer, where he participated in campaigns that expanded his understanding of leadership. He traveled across different regions, observed the lives of people beyond Rome, and learned how armies moved, adapted, and endured. These experiences cultivated a sense of discipline and broadened his perspective on the Republic's role in the wider world. His election as Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome, marked a significant milestone. The position carried both symbolic and practical power, placing Caesar at the center of religious and political life. He used this role to strengthen alliances, maintain visibility, and build trust among citizens. Though still rising, he had already begun to weave his presence into the fabric of Roman society. Caesar's ambition did not manifest as forceful aggression, but as steady forward movement. He understood how to appeal to different groups: soldiers, ordinary citizens, and political leaders. His speeches conveyed clarity and purpose, and his decisions reflected an ability to balance idealism with practicality. Through patience and calculated steps, Caesar positioned himself for greater roles within the Republic. The formation of the first triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus demonstrated Caesar's skill in forging strategic partnerships. By aligning himself with two powerful figures, he created a structure that boosted his influence while offering mutual benefits. This alliance helped him secure the governorship of Gaul, a position that would define the next phase of his career. Caesar's rise was not sudden, but the result of consistent effort, thoughtful planning, and a capacity to understand the shifting dynamics of the Republic. He moved through the world with calm determination, shaping relationships, developing skills, and preparing for the opportunities that lay ahead. In these early years, the foundation of his enduring legacy was quietly set into motion. Gaul and the expanding frontiers. Caesar's command in Gaul marked a turning point in both his life and Rome's expanding influence. The region, with its varied landscapes and numerous tribes, offered challenges that required not only military strength, but also diplomacy, patience, and adaptability. Gaul was a place of forests, rivers, mountains, and open plains, each presenting unique conditions that shaped the movement of armies and the relationships formed with local peoples. When Caesar arrived, tensions among Gallic tribes created opportunities for alliances and intervention. Rome had long maintained interests in the region, seeking security along its northern borders. Caesar approached his new role with strategic clarity. He recognized that to secure Rome's frontier, he needed to build trust with some tribes while preparing to confront others who threatened stability. His leadership blended firmness with an understanding of local dynamics. Campaigns across Gaul unfolded over several years. Caesar and his legions traveled through dense woodlands where sunlight filtered softly through tall trees, across riverbanks where water flowed steadily toward distant seas, and through open fields that stretched toward the horizon. Each region had its own customs, leaders, and traditions. Caesar documented these experiences carefully, noting the courage, organization, and character of the tribes he encountered. The legions under Caesar's command operated with discipline and precision. They built fortified camps each evening, established supply lines, and adapted their tactics to the terrain. Soldiers carried their equipment over long distances, facing weather that shifted from warm summers to cold, wet winters. Through these efforts, the legions developed deep loyalty to Caesar, who shared their hardships, offered encouragement, and rewarded their dedication. Diplomacy played a central role in Caesar's success. He met with tribal leaders, negotiated terms, and sought agreements that would maintain peace. Yet when conflict became unavoidable, he acted decisively. Battles were approached with calm planning rather than haste. Caesar studied enemy formations, identified strategic advantages, and ensured that his troops moved in coordinated patterns. Victory, when achieved, strengthened Rome's presence and persuaded other tribes to seek alliance rather than resistance. One of the most notable challenges came from the Helvetii migration and, later, the resistance led by Vercingetorix, a charismatic leader who unified many tribes. Caesar's ability to adapt and respond to these large-scale threats demonstrated his strategic brilliance. The siege of Alesia, where Roman forces surrounded a fortified hilltop settlement with double defensive lines, became a testament to engineering skill and persistence. The eventual Roman victory marked a turning point that significantly expanded Rome's control. By the end of his campaigns, Caesar had secured Gaul for Rome, creating a buffer that protected the Republic from northern invasions. The region became integrated into the Roman world, bringing new resources, cultural diversity, and strategic advantages. Caesar's accomplishments in Gaul strengthened his reputation and deepened the loyalty of his soldiers, setting the stage for the momentous events that would follow. Crossing the Rubicon. As Caesar's successes in Gaul began to shape his reputation, political tensions in Rome intensified. His achievements brought admiration from many citizens, but also concern from influential senators who feared his growing power. Meanwhile, the alliance of the First Triumvirate weakened after Crassus's death and Pompey's shift toward the Senate's interests. Caesar's relationship with Rome became increasingly complex, marked by uncertainty, expectation, and a rising sense of inevitable conflict. The Senate demanded that Caesar disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. This requirement, though rooted in tradition, posed great risk for Caesar. Without the protection of his command, he could face prosecution from political rivals who sought to limit his influence. Caesar, aware of the danger, deliberated carefully. He valued the Republic but believed that the demands placed upon him were unfair and driven by fear rather than justice. The moment that defined this tension occurred at the banks of the Rubicon, a small river marking the northern boundary of Italy. Roman law prohibited generals from crossing into Italian territory with their armies. To do so would symbolize open defiance against the authority of the state. The river itself was narrow and calm, its water flowing gently between grassy banks. Yet the decision that lay before Caesar carried weight far beyond the quiet scene. Caesar paused at the river's edge, contemplating the choice before him. Behind him stood loyal soldiers who had marched with him across Gaul, sharing victories, hardships, and deep bonds of trust. Ahead lay Rome, a city he loved, shaped by tradition and the promise of opportunity, but also filled with uncertainty about his fate. Crossing the Rubicon meant accepting the possibility of civil conflict. Remaining behind meant surrendering to political forces he believed would act unfairly. In the end, Caesar chose to cross. The decision reflected his sense of responsibility to his soldiers, his commitment to his own honor, and his belief that Rome needed steady leadership. As his legions stepped into the shallow water, the quiet ripples symbolized a turning point in Roman history. Caesar moved forward calmly, not with triumph, but with determination and awareness of what lay ahead. News of his advance spread quickly. In Rome, panic and debate filled the air as leaders fled or prepared for confrontation. Caesar, however, entered the Italian peninsula without violence whenever possible. He sought to minimize conflict, allowing opponents to retreat peacefully and reassuring communities that he intended to restore stability rather than bring destruction. The crossing of the Rubicon became a symbol of choice and consequence, a quiet moment that carried immense significance. It marked the transition from political tension to direct action, setting Rome on a path that would eventually transform its system of governance. Through this decisive step, Caesar demonstrated his willingness to face uncertainty and shape the future, guided by loyalty, strategy, and the belief that he was acting for the good of the Republic. Caesar as dictator. After crossing the Rubicon and entering Italy, Caesar advanced steadily but with restraint, seeking to avoid unnecessary conflict. His approach, marked by calm diplomacy and careful strategy, allowed him to gain support across various regions. Many communities welcomed him, recalling his successes, fairness, and reputation for generosity. As political opposition shifted and Pompey retreated eastward, Caesar eventually entered Rome, finding it unsettled but open to his leadership. Caesar did not immediately claim absolute power. Instead, he worked to restore order within the city. The Senate, functioning amid uncertainty, granted him temporary dictatorial authority, a role traditionally reserved for emergencies. Caesar accepted this responsibility with the intention of addressing pressing issues, debt relief, administrative concerns, and the stabilizing of food supplies. His decisions were measured and pragmatic, aiming to rebuild trust and restore normalcy. After securing Italy, Caesar pursued Pompey across the Mediterranean, confronting challenges that required both strategic insight and patience. Battles unfolded in Greece, Egypt, and North Africa, each influenced by shifting alliances, unfamiliar terrain, and the unpredictable nature of war. Despite setbacks, Caesar maintained steady determination, adapting tactics and forging relationships that strengthened his position. When Caesar finally returned to Rome, he was appointed dictator for a longer term. With this authority, he introduced an array of reforms designed to address economic disparities, administrative inefficiencies, and social tensions. He expanded the Senate's membership, bringing in representatives from provinces who had long contributed to Rome's growth. He reorganized local governments, improved the calendar, and initiated public works that created employment and infrastructure improvements. Despite holding considerable power, Caesar maintained a public presence that felt approachable. He walked through markets, listened to citizens, and remained visible during ceremonies and gatherings. Many saw him as a unifying figure, someone who could guide Rome through turbulent times and restore balance. His compassion toward former enemies, including pardoning individuals who had fought against him, contributed to his reputation for clemency. Yet concerns emerged among some senators who feared that Caesar's authority might eclipse the traditional structures of the Republic. They worried that concentrated power, even administered with fairness, could become permanent. Whispered debates circulated in private homes, baths, and quiet corners of the forum. The idea that Caesar might accept the title of king troubled those who valued Rome's long-standing rejection of monarchy. Caesar, however, expressed no desire to abandon the Republic's foundations. He continued to focus on reforms, public works, and the expansion of citizenship rights. His leadership brought stability to regions previously troubled by conflict and uncertainty. Yet even with these accomplishments, tension lingered in the air, a subtle but persistent feeling that the political equilibrium had shifted too far to be easily restored. As Caesar's term as dictator progressed, Rome experienced a blend of relief, prosperity, and cautious reflection. The city grew more organized, and many citizens felt hopeful for the future. Yet beneath the calm surface, the question of power, how much one person should hold, and for how long, began to shape the thoughts of those who worried for the Republic's future. Rome under transformation. Caesar's leadership ushered in a period of transformation that touched nearly every aspect of Roman life. The city, already a bustling center of trade, politics, and culture, began to shift in visible and subtle ways. Streets grew busier, public spaces expanded, and new building projects reflected both ambition and practicality. Everyday routines carried on, but citizens sensed a new rhythm emerging, one shaped by stability, reform, and the interconnectedness of the expanding world around them. One of Caesar's most lasting contributions was the reform of the calendar. For years, Rome's lunar-based calendar had fallen out of alignment with the seasons, creating confusion in agriculture, festivals, and public planning. Caesar, working with astronomers, introduced a solar calendar that more accurately reflected the Earth's movement. This simple yet profound change brought clarity to daily life, allowing farmers, merchants, and officials to plan with renewed confidence. Urban development flourished. New forums, marketplaces, and administrative buildings enhanced the city's structure. Public works created jobs for laborers and improved living conditions. Wide streets and expanded gathering spaces allowed citizens to move more freely and engage with their community. Caesar also initiated the construction of the Forum Julium, a new civic area designed to ease congestion and provide additional space for public affairs. Beyond the city itself, Caesar addressed broader societal issues. He redistributed land to veterans who had served faithfully, offering them stability and a sense of place. He granted citizenship to people in regions previously excluded, creating a more inclusive and unified republic. These actions strengthened loyalty across territories and reflected Caesar's understanding of Rome's evolving identity. Economic reforms also shaped the transformation. Caesar regulated grain distribution, eased tax burdens, and introduced measures that curbed corruption. These efforts improved access to essential goods and helped stabilize markets. Merchants found conditions more predictable, artisans enjoyed steady demand, and families benefited from fairer pricing. These changes, though gradual, built confidence among citizens. Culturally, Rome became increasingly diverse. People from across the empire visited the city for trade, legal matters, or education. Languages, customs, and traditions blended into a vibrant mosaic. Scholars from Greece contributed to intellectual life, while artisans from Egypt, Syria, and Gaul introduced new skills and artistic styles. The city's atmosphere became one of curiosity and openness, a place where ideas moved freely and communities learned from one another. Despite these positive developments, Rome still carried the weight of transition. Some citizens welcomed the changes, while others held concerns about the shifting balance of power. Whispers of uncertainty circulated among senators who feared the republic's traditional structures were fading. Yet for many ordinary Romans, the daily improvements brought comfort and reassurance. Through all this, the city retained its familiar rhythms. Markets filled with voices, bathhouses echoed with conversation, and families gathered at twilight to share simple meals. The essence of Roman life, grounded in tradition, community, and resilience, remained constant even as transformation unfolded around it. Caesar's reforms, though significant, blended with these rhythms, creating a sense of continuity amid change. The Ides of March, as Caesar's influence continued to grow, the atmosphere in Rome shifted once more. The city felt steady and prosperous, yet beneath its calm exterior lay a network of anxieties. Some senators feared that the republic's fragile balance could not withstand the concentration of power in one person's hands. Others valued Caesar's reforms but worried about their long-term implications. These concerns unfolded quietly in private homes, shaded gardens, and discreet corners of public buildings. Caesar himself remained active, attentive, and deeply engaged with Rome's needs. He planned future campaigns, introduced new policies, and met with allies who sought guidance. His schedule grew busy, filled with administrative work, public appearances, and discussions about the future. Despite political tensions, Caesar appeared confident and focused, unaware of the depth of opposition forming around him. A group of senators, convinced that the republic's survival depended on eliminating Caesar, began meeting in secret. Their motivations varied. Some feared tyranny, others guarded personal interests, and still others believed they were acting in defense of tradition. They saw themselves not as adversaries of Caesar, but as protectors of Rome's oldest values. The plan they developed carried both solemnity and risk, reflecting their belief that drastic action was necessary. As the Ides of March approached, Rome continued its usual routines. Markets bustled with life, temples filled with worshippers, and families prepared for the arrival of spring. The calm rhythms of daily life contrasted sharply with the quiet tensions rising within the Senate. Caesar received warnings, omens, letters, and comments from those who sensed danger, but he brushed them aside, trusting in the goodwill he believed he still held among his peers. On the morning of March 15th, Caesar prepared to attend a Senate meeting at the theater of Pompey. The air was mild, carrying the early signs of spring. As he walked, accompanied by advisors and officials, he maintained his steady composure. At the entrance, he greeted those who had gathered, unaware that several among them were part of the conspiracy. Inside the Senate chamber, the atmosphere shifted. Senators approached Caesar with seemingly routine matters, gradually surrounding him. What followed was sudden and irreversible. Blades flashed briefly in the dim light as the conspirators struck. The attack, though chaotic, was driven by a belief, however misguided, that the Republic could be restored through this act. Caesar fell among the very people he had worked with, his final moments filled with confusion and disbelief. News of Caesar's death spread swiftly through Rome. Shock and sorrow rippled across the city. Citizens gathered in the streets, speaking in hushed tones, searching for understanding. The conspirators had expected to be welcomed as liberators, but instead, they faced a public overwhelmed by grief and uncertainty. The Ides of March became a turning point. Rather than restoring stability, the event plunged Rome into further turmoil. Yet in the quiet after the tragedy, people remembered Caesar not only as a leader, but as a figure who had shaped their world through clarity, compassion, and action. His legacy endured, guiding Rome toward a future no one had fully anticipated. The second triumvirate. In the wake of Caesar's death, Rome entered a period of uncertainty that touched every corner of public life. Streets filled with conversations spoken in soft, unsettled tones. Citizens wondered what the future might bring, sensing that a great shift was unfolding. Amid this atmosphere, new leaders emerged, figures shaped by their relationship to Caesar and their roles within the Republic. From this moment of transition came the second triumvirate, an alliance formed by Octavian, Mark Antony, and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, was young but thoughtful, carrying the weight of expectation on his shoulders. His calm presence and careful judgment strengthened the trust of those who believed in him. Mark Antony, seasoned and confident, had long been one of Caesar's closest supporters. His voice carried authority, and his experience in military and political matters made him a central figure. Lepidus, though quieter in influence, provided stability through his administrative experience and connections within the Senate. These three men formed the triumvirate not through shared ambition alone, but through a deep awareness of Rome's fragile state. The Republic was wounded, its people divided between grief, fear, and hope. To prevent further chaos, the triumvirs agreed to share power and restore order. Their alliance was formalized through legal means, granting them extraordinary authority for a limited time. With these powers, they sought to strengthen the state and settle the unrest that had taken root. The early days of their rule were shaped by both cooperation and tension. The triumvirs worked to stabilize the provinces, restore grain supplies, and address the threat posed by Caesar's assassins. Each leader commanded loyalty from different regions and factions, creating a delicate balance that required constant attention. Yet while they worked together, the undercurrents of rivalry were always present, touching their interactions with subtle pressure. Rome itself remained vibrant despite the uncertainty. Markets continued to fill with voices, bathhouses echoed with conversation, and families gathered at dusk for meals. The presence of the triumvirate brought a sense of temporary reassurance. People hoped that order might return even if they were unsure of the path ahead. Military campaigns soon followed. Antony and Octavian led forces to confront the conspirators who had fled east. The Battle of Philippi marked a decisive moment, ending the immediate threat from Caesar's assassins. With this victory, the triumvirate strengthened its control. Yet the alliance began to show signs of strain. Differences in personality, ambition, and vision for Rome's future slowly surfaced. Despite internal tensions, the triumvirate played a crucial role in guiding Rome through a turbulent period. Their cooperation, fragile but necessary, prevented the immediate collapse of the Republic. Yet their struggles also revealed how deeply Rome had changed. Power, once shared among many through tradition, now concentrated in the hands of a few, signaling the quiet but unmistakable shift toward a new political era. In these early steps, the foundations of the Roman Empire began to form not through sudden transformation, but through the steady unfolding of events that followed Caesar's death. The triumvirate represented a transition, guiding Rome from the uncertainty of the past toward the promise of something different. Rise of Augustus. As the alliances of the Second Triumvirate evolved, the young Octavian steadily emerged as a figure of remarkable composure and insight. Though initially overshadowed by Mark Antony's experience and reputation, Octavian possessed a quiet determination that transformed how Rome viewed him. His rise was not defined by dramatic gestures, but by careful planning, patient decision-making, and a consistent ability to understand both political landscapes and human nature. After the defeat of Caesar's assassins at Philippi, the triumvirs divided the territories among themselves. Antony traveled east to oversee the provinces and build alliances, while Octavian remained in Rome to address the challenges at home. Lepidus controlled parts of Africa, though his influence began to wane. Octavian's focus on administrative work revealed his ability to build stability through organization, rather than through military exploits alone. Rome faced many difficulties during this period. Veterans returning from campaigns required land, and shortages strained local communities. Octavian worked to manage these issues with care, balancing the needs of soldiers with the rights of landowners. His efforts, though sometimes met with resistance, helped reduce tensions. Through steady governance, he demonstrated a commitment to Rome's long-term well-being rather than personal gain. Meanwhile, Antony became increasingly tied to Egypt, where he formed a partnership with Cleopatra VII. Their alliance blended political strategy with personal connection, creating both admiration and concern among Romans. Stories of their activities traveled across the Mediterranean, often exaggerated by those who saw an opportunity to weaken Antony's influence. Octavian, aware of how public perception shaped politics, used these narratives to present himself as a protector of Roman values. As tensions between the two leaders grew, their alliance gradually unraveled. Rome stood divided, unsure of how the conflict would unfold. Yet Octavian's approach remained measured. He sought support from the Senate, the people, and the military, emphasizing unity and tradition. His calm demeanor reassured many who feared further instability. The decisive moment came with the naval battle of Actium. Octavian's forces, commanded by his trusted general Agrippa, confronted Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The battle unfolded along the calm waters of the Ionian Sea, where winds carried the scent of salt and distant shores. Through careful maneuvering and disciplined tactics, Octavian's navy gained the advantage. Antony and Cleopatra withdrew, and their retreat signaled the turning point. With their defeat, Octavian moved to restore order in the eastern provinces. Antony and Cleopatra later met their ends in Alexandria, leaving Octavian as the uncontested leader of the Roman world. His victory brought a sense of closure to years of conflict and upheaval. Returning to Rome, Octavian was welcomed with quiet hope, a hope that he would guide the city toward stability. In the years that followed, Octavian adopted the title Augustus, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Roman history. His rise reflected a blend of humility, strategy, and steadfast vision. Through calm leadership and thoughtful reforms, Augustus would shape the future of the empire in ways that endured for centuries. The Pax Romana begins with Augustus now guiding the Roman world. A new era emerged, one defined not by conflict, but by stability, harmony, and gentle prosperity. Historians would later call this period the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, a time when the empire experienced relative calm and flourishing growth. The beginning of this era did not arise suddenly, rather, unfolded through a series of thoughtful decisions and quiet transformations initiated by Augustus. Augustus understood that Rome, weary from years of civil war, needed steady leadership and clear direction. He approached governance with a blend of humility and firmness, avoiding the appearance of absolute power. Though he held significant authority, he presented himself as the first citizen, a role that reassured those who valued the Republic's traditions. By respecting Rome's institutions while gently reshaping them, Augustus created a system that balanced continuity with innovation. One of his early priorities was securing the borders of the empire. Through diplomacy, alliances, and careful deployment of legions, Augustus created a sense of safety that extended across vast territories. Roads and sea routes became safer for travel, allowing merchants, families, and officials to move freely. This stability encouraged economic growth and cultural exchange. Within the empire, Augustus invested in infrastructure. He repaired roads, restored temples, and built aqueducts that carried fresh water into crowded cities. Public buildings reflected both beauty and practicality, offering citizens spaces for gathering, learning, and engaging in civic life. These improvements enhanced daily routines, making life more comfortable and predictable. The arts flourished. Poets such as Virgil, Horace, and Ovid crafted works that celebrated Rome's heritage while exploring themes of identity, love, and human experience. Their writings, supported by Augustus's patronage, became cornerstones of Roman literature. Music, sculpture, and architecture prospered as well, enriching the cultural landscape and inspiring generations to come. Economic prosperity followed the calm. Agriculture thrived across the provinces, supported by stable trade routes and reliable governance. Merchants transported goods from one end of the empire to another: olive oil from Spain, grain from Egypt, textiles from the east, and spices from distant lands. Markets in Rome buzzed with activity as people enjoyed access to goods that reflected the empire's reach. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the Pax Romana was the sense of connection it fostered. People felt linked not only by roads and trade, but by shared laws, cultural practices, and a collective identity. Families in distant provinces participated in festivals, used Roman coinage, and recognized the steady presence of Roman authority. Though each region maintained its traditions, the empire's structure helped create a sense of unity across diverse communities. The Pax Romana marked a turning point, a time when Rome shifted from a world shaped by political unrest to one guided by stability, cooperation, and moderated expansion. Under Augustus's careful leadership, the empire found balance, allowing its people to breathe, rebuild, and look toward the future with renewed optimism. Daily life in the early empire. As the Pax Romana settled across the empire, daily life for ordinary Romans entered a period of steady rhythm and gentle prosperity. The stability created under Augustus shaped the routines of families, workers, traders, and travelers. Though the empire stretched across continents, from sunlit coasts to mountain valleys, a shared sense of security connected people in their everyday lives. This era allowed communities to grow, traditions to flourish, and families to imagine futures filled with possibility. In the cities, mornings began early. Shopkeepers opened wooden shutters to reveal stalls filled with bread, fruits, fabrics, and pottery. The sense of freshly baked loaves, herbs, and warm oil drifted through narrow streets. Bakers kneaded dough in small workshops, while carpenters, metalworkers, and tailors greeted apprentices arriving for the day. The sounds of tools tapping, carts rolling, and vendors calling out created a gentle backdrop of activity. Homes reflected the diversity of Roman society. Wealthier families lived in spacious houses with courtyards that captured sunlight and breezes. These spaces featured wall paintings, mosaics, and carefully arranged plants. Meanwhile, many ordinary citizens lived in multi-story apartment buildings known as insulae. These homes were simpler but filled with warmth, laughter, and the shared daily routines of neighbors exchanging meals, stories, and assistance. Meals played a central role in daily life. Breakfasts were simple bread dipped in wine or accompanied by cheese or olives. Midday meals offered a chance to pause. Stews, fruits, and small pastries provided comfort. Evenings brought families together for dinners that ranged from modest dishes to elaborate feasts, depending on resources. Dining was a moment for conversation, reflection, and connection, reinforcing bonds that carried through the rhythms of each day. Public baths were essential to Roman life. Citizens visited early in the day or at dusk to bathe, exercise, and converse. These bathhouses, warmed by flowing water and heated floors, offered a peaceful space where people from all walks of life mingled. Conversations drifted through the warm air, discussions about politics, business, family matters, or stories from distant provinces. Children enjoyed a world shaped by learning and play. They attended schools run by tutors who taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and the foundations of rhetoric. After lessons, they filled courtyards with laughter, playing games involving balls, hoops, or simple carved toys. Their days blended learning with curiosity, creating a foundation for future roles within the empire. Religious practices added structure and meaning. Families honored household gods with small offerings. Temples hosted ceremonies that brought communities together. Festivals marked by music, parades, and feasts offered joyful breaks from routine. These celebrations connected people to the rhythms of the seasons and the values of their ancestors. Travel also became more common. Well-maintained roads and secure sea routes allowed merchants, officials, and families to move safely across the empire. Inns along major roads offered rest and meals, turning distant provinces into reachable destinations. Travelers returned with stories that expanded horizons and encouraged open-mindedness. Through these peaceful and structured routines, life in the early empire took on a warm, steady quality. Families experienced security, opportunity, and connection, elements that shaped the Roman world for generations to come. Art, literature, and culture. The cultural landscape of the early empire blossomed with creativity, learning, and new expressions of identity. Under Augustus and his successors, Rome became a vibrant center where art, literature, and cultural exchange thrived. This flourishing environment reflected both the continuity of ancient traditions and the inspiration drawn from diverse regions within the empire. As peace spread, artists and thinkers found space to create works that would echo across centuries. Roman art blended realism with idealism. Sculptors carved marble statues that captured lifelike expressions and graceful forms. Busts of leaders, philosophers, and ancestors filled public buildings and private homes, serving as both decoration and commemoration. Frescoes and mosaics adorned walls and floors, depicting scenes of mythology, landscapes, and daily life. These colorful works brought warmth and personality into domestic spaces, creating environments rich in imagination. Literature flourished through the patronage of Augustus and other influential figures. Poets emerged whose works shaped Roman identity. Virgil's Aeneid offered a majestic tale linking Rome's origins to legendary narratives. Horace's poems explored themes of friendship, nature, and the simple joys of life. Ovid's playful verses and myths captured the spirit of creativity and wonder, appealing to audiences across social classes. These texts became cornerstones of Roman education and cultural life. Theater continued to bring people together. Performances ranged from comedic plays to dramatic tragedies, staged in open-air theaters with stone seating and open skies above. Actors' voices carried through the air as audiences watched stories unfold, tales of love, ambition, conflict, and the complexities of human nature. These performances provided entertainment and reflection, enriching the emotional lives of citizens. Public monuments celebrated achievements and expressed shared values. Triumphal arches marked important victories, decorated with detailed carvings that illustrated events and flowing scenes. Temples honored both traditional Roman gods and deities from other cultures, reflecting the empire's inclusiveness. The construction of these monuments brought together architects, builders, and artisans whose combined efforts shaped Rome's physical and cultural identity. Education played a vital role in the spread of culture. Children studied literature, philosophy, mathematics, and history. Greek tutors were highly valued, bringing with them knowledge that connected Roman students to the intellectual traditions of earlier civilizations. Libraries grew in number, offering spaces where scrolls and texts preserved centuries of ideas. Scholars gathered to discuss ethics, astronomy, language, and the nature of governance. Music and performance art enriched communal gatherings. Instruments such as flutes, lyres, drums, and string devices created melodies that echoed through banquets, festivals, and ceremonies. Dancers performed graceful movements that complemented the mood of celebrations or religious events. Cultural exchange expanded beyond Rome. Provinces contributed their own artistic traditions, Egyptian motifs, Greek styles, Eastern textiles, and African patterns all found places within Roman homes and public buildings. This blending of influences created a multicultural atmosphere that shaped the empire's legacy. The cultural achievements of this era reflected a society at peace, one where creativity could flourish and where ideas, stories, and artistic expression became a shared treasure of the Roman world. Expansion under Augustus. While Augustus prioritized stability and internal harmony, he also worked carefully to define and secure the borders of the empire. His approach to expansion was measured, strategic, and guided by the belief that lasting strength came from thoughtful planning rather than rapid conquest. Under his leadership, Rome expanded its influence across regions that enhanced both security and prosperity, creating a world where frontiers felt organized rather than uncertain. In the north, Augustus focused on stabilizing the territories along the Rhine and Danube rivers. These natural boundaries offered protection and defined clear lines between Rome and the tribes of Germania. Roman fortresses, watchtowers, and military camps appeared along these frontiers, each positioned with a sense of practicality. Soldiers stationed there lived structured lives, training, patrolling, and maintaining order. These quiet routines created an environment of readiness without aggression. In the West, Augustus strengthened Roman presence in Hispania and Gaul. Roads improved communication, allowing goods and people to move efficiently across landscapes of forests, hills, and coastlines. Local leaders who aligned themselves with Rome retained influence, creating partnerships that encouraged loyalty and cooperation. The integration of these regions into the empire brought stability and economic growth, benefiting both Rome and the provinces. The eastern frontier required diplomacy. Augustus avoided unnecessary conflict with powerful kingdoms such as Parthia. Instead, he negotiated agreements that recognized Rome's influence while respecting established borders. These diplomatic efforts reduced tensions and allowed the empire to maintain peaceful relationships without costly campaigns. Trade flourished along these routes, carrying spices, silks, and precious materials that enriched Roman markets. In Africa, Rome expanded its hold along the northern coast, strengthening ties with communities that offered resources and strategic ports. These developments supported grain shipments that fed the growing population in Rome. Cities in the region blended Roman administrative practices with local traditions, reflecting the broader pattern of cultural integration across the empire. Augustus also focused on improving naval power. By establishing fleets in key locations, he ensured safer sea travel and protected coastal settlements. This naval presence strengthened trade routes across the Mediterranean, turning the sea into a calm and reliable pathway for merchants and travelers. Despite these expansions, Augustus maintained a preference for consolidation rather than aggressive conquest. He understood the limits of Roman resources and sought to avoid the political turmoil that often followed overextension. Through patient strategy, he preserved peace along the borders and ensured that Rome's territories remained manageable and secure. Life in the frontier provinces reflected this stability. Families lived in settlements near military camps, creating local economies that supported soldiers and travelers. Markets offered goods from across the empire: olive oil, pottery, fabrics, and tools, connecting even remote communities to the broader Roman world. Temples, forums, and baths appeared, mirroring the architectural patterns found in Rome itself. Through this measured expansion, Augustus shaped an empire marked by unity, security, and prosperity. His leadership demonstrated that lasting strength came not from constant war, but from thoughtful balance, cooperation, and the steady cultivation of peace. The Julio-Claudian emperors after Augustus established the foundations of the Roman Empire. Leadership passed into the hands of his family line, beginning a period known as the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This era saw a succession of emperors whose personalities and policies shaped Rome in diverse ways. Though each ruler differed in temperaments and approaches, together they guided the empire through decades of expansion, cultural development, and administrative refinement. Life continued in familiar rhythms for most citizens, even as decisions made at the highest levels influenced the world around them. Tiberius, Augustus's stepson, succeeded him. Reserved and thoughtful, he approached governance with caution. Unlike his predecessor, Tiberius preferred quiet stability over grand displays. He strengthened the economy, kept borders secure, and avoided unnecessary conflict. Though his aloof nature sometimes created distance between himself and the people, he ensured that the empire remained steady during his early years in power. Following Tiberius came Caligula, whose reign unfolded with contrasts. At first, his leadership inspired hope and enthusiasm. He introduced public games, reduced certain taxes, and acted generously toward citizens. Yet over time, his behavior became erratic, shaped by personal struggles and the pressures of rule. His sudden decisions and unpredictable actions unsettled senators and citizens alike. Despite these challenges, daily life across the empire largely continued undisturbed, cushioned by the strong administrative systems Augustus had built. After Caligula, the reins of power passed to Claudius, a ruler often underestimated due to his quiet and scholarly nature. Yet Claudius proved to be an effective and thoughtful emperor. He expanded the empire into Britain, bringing new lands into Rome's sphere. He strengthened the civil service, incorporated provincial leaders into governance, and championed public works that improved infrastructure. Under his guidance, the empire grew more connected and more inclusive. Nero, the last of the Julio-Claudian line, left a complex legacy. His early reign included reforms, artistic patronage, and measures that benefited the poor. He enjoyed music, theater, and poetry, surrounding himself with artists and performers. Yet as the years progressed, political tensions, personal choices, and internal struggles created instability. The Great Fire of Rome, though not his doing, stirred rumors and fear, deepening divisions in the city. Despite the shifting personalities of the Julio-Claudian emperors, the empire itself remained resilient. Roads, laws, administrative systems, and cultural traditions continued to bind communities across vast distances. Families tended their fields, markets bustled with activity, and festivals celebrated the seasons. The strength of Rome lay not only in its emperors, but in the networks of people who upheld daily life. The Julio-Claudian period demonstrated how leadership could shape the tone of an era, yet also revealed the enduring nature of the Roman system. Even in times of uncertainty, the empire held steady, carried by the stability built during the Pax Romana and the collective efforts of its citizens. The Flavian era following the turmoil that ended Nero's reign, Rome entered a brief but intense period known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Rival claimants, military tensions, and political uncertainty created a sense of fragility across the empire. Yet from this turbulence emerged a new dynasty, the Flavians, who brought renewed order, stability, and pragmatic leadership. Their era marked another quiet transformation, guiding Rome toward recovery and progress after years of unrest. Vespasian, founder of the Flavian dynasty, rose from modest origins. Known for his discipline, practical nature, and steady character, he focused on restoring balance within the empire. His leadership reflected a return to traditional values, simplicity, responsibility, and commitment to effective governance. Vespasian reformed the financial system, rebuilt Rome after years of neglect, and strengthened provincial administration. Under his calm hand, the empire regained confidence. One of Vespasian's most enduring projects was the construction of the Flavian Amphitheater, later known as the Colosseum. Built on the site of Nero's former private lake, it symbolized a return of public spaces to the citizens. The amphitheater became a place where people gathered to watch spectacles, athletic events, and performances. Its towering arches and meticulous design demonstrated the architectural ambition and engineering skill of the Flavian period. Upon Vespasian's death, his son Titus succeeded him. Though his reign was short, Titus earned admiration for his kindness and compassion. During his rule, disasters struck: the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and a devastating fire in Rome. His response to these tragedies was marked by empathy and action. He coordinated relief efforts, provided aid to survivors, and ensured that rebuilding began quickly. His calm leadership brought comfort to citizens during difficult times. Domitian, Titus's brother, followed as emperor. His reign combined efficiency with a stronger emphasis on authority. Domitian improved defenses along the frontiers, reformed currency, and supported cultural activities. Yet his stern approach toward governance and increasing suspicion of political rivals created tensions within the Senate. Despite this, the empire's infrastructure, economy, and cultural life remained steady. Throughout the Flavian era, daily life continued in familiar patterns. Markets thrived, roads remained busy, and families celebrated festivals that honored gods and ancestors. Artisans created metalwork, pottery, and textiles that traveled across provinces. Farmers cultivated fields that nourished communities near and far. The rhythms of life carried on, supported by the stability the Flavian rulers restored. The Flavians demonstrated that the empire could recover from turmoil through thoughtful leadership, strategic planning, and a renewed focus on public welfare. Their dynasty lasted only 3 emperors, but their impact shaped Rome's future. They reinforced the importance of structure, order, and resilience, qualities that helped the empire endure through generations. In their calm rebuilding and practical reforms, the Flavians guided Rome into a new period of balance. Their legacy reminded citizens that even after instability, renewal was possible, and that the strength of the empire lay in both its leaders and its people. Trajan and the maximum expansion. With the rise of Trajan in the early 2nd century CE, Rome entered one of the most prosperous and expansive periods in its history. Trajan, born in the provinces rather than in Rome itself, embodied the empire's growing inclusivity. His leadership combined military skill, administrative wisdom, and a genuine concern for the well-being of his people. Under his guidance, Rome reached its greatest territorial extent, a moment often seen as the height of Roman power. Trajan began by strengthening the foundations laid by his predecessors. He worked closely with the Senate, emphasizing cooperation rather than conflict. His calm and approachable manner respect not only from leaders, but also from soldiers and ordinary citizens. He believed that prosperity grew from unity, fairness, and steady governance. One of Trajan's most significant accomplishments was his Dacian campaigns. Dacia, located north of the Danube River, presented both opportunity and challenge. Its rich mineral resources, particularly gold, attracted Roman interest. Trajan, aware of the economic and strategic benefits, approached the conflict with careful planning. Roads were built, bridges extended across rivers, and armies moved with coordinated precision. The eventual victory brought new wealth into the empire, supporting public projects and enriching Roman society. Trajan's expansion extended beyond Europe. He launched campaigns into the Near East, securing territories that increased Rome's influence over important trade routes. Though these regions were difficult to govern long-term, they demonstrated the strength and reach of Roman power at its peak. Yet Trajan's legacy extended far beyond military success. He championed public works, believing that infrastructure strengthened both the economy and the spirit of the people. Under his direction, Rome saw the construction of new forums, markets, roads, and aqueducts. Trajan's forum, graced with the Grand Basilica and his iconic column, became a symbol of architectural brilliance and civic pride. He also introduced social programs designed to support the vulnerable. The Alimenta, a public assistance initiative, offered aid to orphans and impoverished children, ensuring they received food and education. This program reflected Trajan's belief that the well-being of the future depended on caring for the young. Provinces across the empire prospered during his reign. Peaceful regions experienced economic growth, while frontier settlements gained access to improved roads and fortifications. Cultural exchange deepened as merchants, scholars, and travelers moved safely across vast distances. From Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria, the empire felt connected through shared laws, customs, and infrastructure. Trajan's reign represented the harmony of strength and compassion. He expanded Rome's borders, improved the lives of its people, and demonstrated that leadership could combine ambition with empathy. When he passed away, he left behind a world that was broader, richer, and more connected than ever before. His legacy would become a benchmark for future emperors, who looked to his example as a model of excellence. Hadrian and the borders. After Trajan's expansive reign, the empire came under the guidance of Hadrian, a thoughtful and introspective leader whose vision marked a shift in Rome's priorities. While Trajan had extended the empire outward, Hadrian focused on strengthening what already existed. His leadership brought a gentle sense of consolidation and emphasis on stability, balance, and careful stewardship. Rome, vast and diverse, needed not continuous expansion, but thoughtful protection and attentive governance. Hadrian traveled extensively throughout the empire, more than any emperor before him. He visited distant provinces, spoke with local leaders, and observed the daily lives of soldiers and citizens. His journeys took him from the chilly frontiers of Britannia to the warm coasts of North Africa, from the cities of Greece to the deserts of the East. Wherever he went, he emphasized unity, fairness, and the importance of strong, well-managed borders. One of Hadrian's most enduring accomplishments was the construction of Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain. Stretching across rolling hills and rugged landscapes, the wall marked a clear boundary between Roman territory and the lands beyond. Built of stone and turf, with towers, forts, and gates at regular intervals, it served not just as a defensive structure, but as a symbol of Rome's presence. Soldiers stationed along the wall lived quiet, disciplined lives patrolling paths, maintaining equipment, and observing the vast, windswept plains to the north. In other parts of the empire, Hadrian reinforced borders with similar care. He built fortifications along the Danube and strengthened defenses in Africa and Asia Minor. These efforts provided stability and allowed frontier communities to flourish without fear of sudden conflict. Villages grew near military camps, their markets supporting both soldiers and families who lived in nearby settlements. Hadrian also valued culture and learning. A lover of Greek literature and philosophy, he supported artists, poets, and scholars. Cities across the empire benefited from his patronage, receiving new temples, libraries, and public spaces. In Athens, he completed the Temple of Olympian Zeus and built structures that blended Roman engineering with Greek elegance. His architectural projects offered beauty, comfort, and inspiration to those who lived in or visited them. Despite his focus on borders, Hadrian maintained strong diplomatic relationships. He preferred negotiation over conquest, peace over conflict. Through careful treaties and respectful dialogue, he created bonds that strengthened Rome's presence without provoking unnecessary wars. His approach brought calm to regions that had once experienced tension, fostering trust between Rome and the many cultures under its influence. Hadrian's reign represented a moment of thoughtful reflection in the empire's long history. He recognized that strength came not only from expansion, but from stability, fairness, and connection. By focusing on borders, communities, and cultural enrichment, he offered Rome a period of gentle balance where the empire could breathe, grow inwardly, and prepare for the generations ahead. Life across a vast empire. During the height of its power, Rome governed a world so large and varied that no single landscape, language, or culture could define it. From Britain's misty highlands to Egypt's sunlit deserts, from the bustling markets of Syria to the quiet farms of Gaul, the empire encompassed countless ways of life. Yet despite this diversity, a shared sense of structure and stability connected millions of people. Roads, laws, trade routes, and traditions formed gentle threads that tied distant communities into a cohesive whole. In the provinces, daily life moved with calm rhythm. Villagers tended fields of wheat, olives, or grapes, depending on the climate of their region. Farmers rose early, guiding animals through dew-covered fields or irrigating crops under warm sunlight. Meals were simple and satisfying: bread, cheese, vegetables, and local fruits. Families gathered in courtyards or under shaded awnings, sharing food and stories while watching the gentle progression of the day. Towns and cities buzzed with activity. Markets filled with goods from across the empire, pottery from Italy, textiles from the East, spices from Arabia, metals from Britannia, and grain from Egypt. Merchants discussed prices, travelers exchanged news, and artisans demonstrated their craftsmanship. The mingling of languages created a soft tapestry of sounds, Latin mingling with Greek, Aramaic, Berber, Celtic, and countless regional dialects. Roman influence shaped the design of many provincial towns. Forums served as centers for commerce and governance. Baths provided places for relaxation, hygiene, and conversation. Theaters hosted performances where local legends blended with Roman plays. Though each region maintained its traditions, the infrastructure brought a sense of familiarity, creating subtle connections between communities separated by great distances. Life along the frontiers carried its own peaceful rhythm. Soldiers lived in camps built with precision rectangular layouts, orderly rows, training grounds, and communal dining halls. These camps often grew into settlements as merchants, families, and craftsmen established nearby homes. Over time, many of these frontier towns developed their own identities, shaped by the blend of Roman order and local culture. Travel across the empire became easier than ever. Well-maintained roads stretched for thousands of miles, lined with milestones that guided travelers, traders, and officials. Inns offered shelter and meals, turning long journeys into manageable experiences. Sea routes provided connections between major ports, where ships arrived carrying cargo from all corners of the Mediterranean. These networks allowed people to see the world beyond their homes, some traveling for trade, others for education, pilgrimage, or adventure. Religion also added unity. While each region honored its own deities and traditions, many adopted aspects of Roman religion. Festivals brought joy, processions filled streets with vibrant colors, and temples welcomed people seeking guidance, comfort, or gratitude. These spiritual practices fostered community, bridging cultural gaps through shared rituals. Despite its vastness, the Roman Empire created a sense of quiet interconnectedness. People lived their own unique lives, yet all experienced the benefits of peace, trade, and stability. This gentle harmony born from diversity, structure, and mutual reliance defined the empire at its height, shaping memories and stories that would endure long after Rome itself began to change. Rome's golden age continues following the reigns of Trajan and Hadrian. The empire entered what many later considered its golden age, an era marked by wise leadership, economic prosperity, and cultural flourishing. This period, stretching through the rule of the 5 good emperors, offered a sense of serenity and balance that touched every corner of the empire. Strong governance, fair laws, and stable borders created an environment where families could thrive, businesses could grow, and communities could celebrate traditions without fear of disruption. Antoninus Pius, known for his calm and gentle reign, upheld the principles of justice, moderation, and compassion. Under his leadership, the empire enjoyed remarkable internal peace. He focused on maintaining harmony rather than engaging in expansion. His policies strengthened infrastructure, supported education, and offered relief during natural disasters. His reign became a model of steady, thoughtful governance. Marcus Aurelius followed, a philosopher-emperor whose writings found beauty in resilience, wisdom, and the importance of duty. Though he faced external pressures along the northern borders, he approached leadership with deep reflection and fairness. His meditations, written during quiet moments amid campaigns, offered timeless insights into human nature and the values that sustain societies. Despite challenges, Marcus Aurelius maintained stability within the empire. Even as conflicts arose, life for ordinary citizens remained grounded in familiar routines. Markets stayed lively, workshops produced goods that traveled across provinces, and children attended schools that carried forward the traditions of literature, mathematics, and philosophy. The calm created by earlier leaders continued to support cultural and intellectual growth. Architecture flourished during this era. Cities built elegant arches, theaters, temples, and public baths. Engineers expanded aqueducts and improved road networks. These structures served not only practical purposes, but also offered beauty and inspiration. Their design reflected Rome's blend of strength and grace, standing as reminders of human creativity and cooperation. Trade reached extraordinary levels. Ships crossed the Mediterranean with predictable regularity, carrying olive oil, wine, glassware, perfumes, silks, and spices. Caravans traveled along desert paths, connecting Rome to Arabia, India, and beyond. These exchanges brought wealth, ideas, and new experiences to countless communities. The empire's legal system also matured. Emperors worked to refine laws that supported fairness across classes and cultures. Courts assessed disputes with increasing consistency, offering citizens confidence in the justice system. This legal stability contributed to peaceful relationships within and between provinces. Despite its achievements, the Golden Age was not without challenges. Natural disasters, occasional conflicts, and political debates continued to shape life. Yet the tone of leadership, empathetic, thoughtful, and grounded, helped guide Rome through difficulties with resilience. By the time this era drew to a close, the empire had reached remarkable heights. Its influence extended across continents, its culture blended countless traditions, and its people experienced a quality of life shaped by stability, artistry, and connection. Rome's Golden Age stood as a testament to what could be achieved through wise leadership and collective effort, a gentle reminder of the peace that emerges when societies embrace unity and purpose. The Antonine and Severan ages. As Rome moved beyond its Golden Age, the empire entered a period shaped by both continuity and quiet challenges. The Antonine and Severan dynasties guided Rome through decades marked by wisdom, conflict, and transformation. Though life for many citizens remained stable and familiar, subtle shifts in leadership, borders, and social structures began to cast long shadows across the empire's vast landscape. The Antonine Age continued the legacy of strong governance established by earlier emperors. After the death of Marcus Aurelius, his son Commodus assumed power. Commodus's reign began with promise, but soon became marked by unpredictability. His interests leaned toward spectacle rather than statecraft. He participated in gladiatorial games, embraced dramatic gestures, and distanced himself from the disciplined leadership of his father. Though his reign unsettled senators and officials, daily life for most citizens remained largely undisturbed, supported by the systems built by earlier rulers. After Commodus's death, a brief period of turmoil followed. Several emperors rose and fell in quick succession, each attempting to stabilize the empire during uncertain times. Yet Rome's strength endured. The civil service continued its work, legions maintained borders, and provincial communities carried on their routines. The empire's resilience reflected the depth of its foundations, built over generations of effort and adaptation. Stability returned with Septimius Severus, founder of the Severan dynasty. Born in North Africa, he reflected the empire's diversity and the increasingly prominent role of provincial leaders in Roman politics. Severus strengthened the military, recognizing that Rome's security depended on loyal and well-supported soldiers. He increased soldiers' pay, improved fortifications, and expanded the role of the army in governance. These measures ensured stability, but gradually altered the balance of power between civilian and military authority. Severus's reign brought both security and complexity. His focus on the army created an environment where military influence grew stronger, shaping the decisions of future emperors. After his death, his sons Caracalla and Geta inherited the throne jointly. Their rivalry soon escalated, leading to tragedy. Geta was killed, and Caracalla ruled alone. Though remembered for harsh actions, Caracalla also introduced the Constitutio Antoniniana, granting Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. This sweeping decree blended cultures further and expanded the sense of shared identity. The Severan Age continued through several rulers, each facing unique challenges. Economic pressures increased, borders required constant attention, and political factions vied for influence. Yet through these shifts, the empire endured. Markets opened each morning, roads carried travelers, and temples hosted ceremonies honoring gods and ancestors. The everyday rhythms of life provided comfort amid uncertainty. The Antonine and Severan ages represented a transition, neither decline nor ascent, but a moment when Rome began to feel the weight of its size. Shadows of future challenges appeared quietly across the horizon, yet the empire remained vibrant, its people resilient, its culture rich with memory and hope. Quiet changes in society while emperors rose and fell. Deeper transformations were unfolding silently within Roman society. These changes did not arrive suddenly. Rather, they accumulated gradually, shaping the lives of millions in subtle but lasting ways. Some shifts brought new opportunities. Others introduced strains that would eventually influence the empire's future. Together, they formed a complex tapestry of evolution, steady, natural, and reflective of an aging civilization adapting to new realities. Urban populations continued to grow. Cities expanded outward, creating densely populated neighborhoods where people lived in multi-story insulae. Daily life in these buildings was lively and intimate. Neighbors shared stairways, courtyards, and rooftop spaces. While these homes offered connection, they also brought challenges: fire hazards, structural instability, and crowding that demanded careful community cooperation. Yet despite these difficulties, city life thrived with energy and diversity. Economic patterns shifted as well. Trade remained strong, but wealth distribution became increasingly uneven. Large estates in the countryside continued to absorb smaller farms, relying heavily on enslaved labor. This concentration of land created disparities that felt sharper over time. Rural families who once owned modest plots sometimes migrated to cities seeking work, adding to urban growth. At the same time, cultural exchange deepened. Rome's provinces contributed customs, foods, languages, and artistic styles, enriching social life. Eastern religions gained followers, offering spiritual practices that emphasized personal devotion and inner peace. Temples dedicated to Isis, Mithras, and other deities appeared in cities, coexisting with traditional Roman rituals. These spiritual shifts reflected a quiet search for meaning during times of change. Education experienced transformation as well. Literacy grew among urban populations, and schools became more accessible. Children studied grammar, lyric, mathematics, and moral philosophy. Libraries preserved knowledge from Greece, Egypt, and beyond, offering scholars spaces for study and contemplation. Intellectual life remained vibrant, even as political tensions increased. Family structures also evolved. While traditional values persisted, shifting economic conditions influenced relationships. More families lived in urban environments where work and housing differed from rural traditions. Women in certain regions gained increased involvement in commerce and local trade. Though still bound by social expectations, their roles expanded, reflecting society's adaptation to new circumstances. A warmer emphasis on community care emerged. Neighborhood associations, local councils, and volunteer groups helped maintain streets, support festivals, and assist residents during hardships. These small networks fostered belonging and resilience, counterbalancing the vastness of the empire. Yet challenges grew quietly. Inflation strained households. Jobs became more competitive. Crime occasionally increased in crowded districts, prompting local patrols to maintain order. While these issues were not overwhelming, they signaled pressures that would become more prominent in the decades ahead. Despite difficulties, Roman society remained deeply connected by shared traditions: baths, markets, festivals, theater, and communal dining. Families continued to observe rituals honoring ancestors, marking transitions of life with ceremonies that strengthened identity. These quiet societal changes, though subtle, shaped the character of the late empire. They reflected a world evolving gently yet steadily, preparing Rome for the challenges and transformations of the future. Economic slowing as the empire matured. Its vast economic system built over centuries of expansion, trade, and prosperity began to experience signs of strain. These shifts did not immediately disrupt daily life, but quietly, little by little, they introduced challenges that reshaped the rhythms of communities across Rome's territories. The slowing of the economy unfolded not through sudden collapse, but through a gradual accumulation of pressures that touched agriculture, trade, labor, and fiscal governance. One of the earliest indicators was the strain on agriculture. While large estates remained productive, many small farms struggled. Soil depletion in certain regions reduced yields, forcing farmers to work harder for smaller returns. Rural families, already facing competition from wealthy landowners, found it increasingly difficult to maintain stability. Some chose to leave their fields behind, seeking opportunity in towns and cities. Their departure left patches of countryside underused, subtly altering the balance between rural and urban populations. Trade, once the lifeblood of the empire, continued but faced new challenges. Increased piracy in the Mediterranean, even if limited, disrupted routes that had long been reliable. Conflicts along distant borders created uncertainty, making merchants cautious. Inflation and changes in coinage reduced confidence in currency, prompting some traders to rely more heavily on bartering. Goods still flowed between provinces, but the ease and consistency that once defined Roman commerce began to soften. Labor patterns shifted as well. Enslaved workers, long the backbone of agricultural and household industries, became more costly to maintain. As the empire expanded more slowly, fewer enslaved people entered the system. This created labor shortages in certain regions, compelling landowners to adjust. Some turned to tenant farmers, individuals or families who worked land in exchange for a share of the harvest. While this offered security for some, it also introduced new forms of dependence that shaped rural society. Fiscal pressures emerged within the government. Military expenses increased as borders required more attention. Administrative costs rose as the empire grew more complex. Taxation, though essential, placed strain on households when harvests were low or trade slowed. Certain regions struggled to meet tax demands, prompting adjustments or exemptions. These fiscal shifts were not catastrophic, but signaled a growing imbalance between income and expenditure. Urban centers felt these pressures in subtle ways. Markets still bustled, but merchants were more cautious. Families adjusted their budgets, focusing more on essentials. Repairs to public buildings sometimes took longer, and occasional shortages of goods encouraged resourcefulness. Yet despite these constraints, the resilience of Roman society remained evident. Communities supported one another, families adapted, and the familiar rhythms of life persisted. Economic slowing also influenced social mobility. Some citizens found new opportunities in administration or military service. Others faced declining prospects. These small shifts accumulated over time, quietly reshaping the social landscape. Despite emerging challenges, the empire remained vast, interconnected, and deeply rooted. Rome's economic system, though no longer at its peak, continued to support millions of people. The gradual nature of these changes allowed communities to adapt, preserving the sense of continuity and connection that defined Roman life. Plague and uncertainty amid the gradual economic slowing and the subtle changes unfolding within Roman society, a new challenge emerged, one that arrived quietly, without armies or political struggle. It came not from distant borders, but from the invisible world of illness. The Antonine Plague, carried along trade routes and through crowded cities, brought a wave of uncertainty that touched nearly every corner of the empire. Though its origins lay far to the east, its effects unfolded across villages, towns, and bustling urban centers with unsettling speed. At first, the signs seemed ordinary: fevers, fatigue, and small clusters of sickness within households. But soon, patterns appeared. More families fell ill, and symptoms grew more severe. Physicians, relying on the knowledge of their time, worked tirelessly to comfort patients. They prepared herbal remedies, offered cooling baths, and whispered reassuring words. Yet the illness spread faster than they could respond, revealing the limits of even Rome's most skilled healers. Communities adapted to the growing uncertainty with quiet resilience. Families cared for one another, neighbors delivered food to those unable to leave their homes, and priests offered prayers at temples, seeking guidance and protection. Markets grew quieter as people avoided crowds. Workshops reduced their hours, and bathhouses echoed with fewer voices. The rhythms of daily life slowed gently, adjusted by the need for caution and care. Military camps, normally symbols of order and discipline, felt the impact as well. Soldiers, living in close quarters, were vulnerable to the spread of illness. Commanders took steps to isolate the sick, reinforcing routines that emphasized hygiene and separation. Though these efforts helped, they could not completely shield the legions from the effects of the plague. The reduced numbers of healthy soldiers contributed to growing strain along distant frontiers. Despite these hardships, communities continued to find strength in familiar traditions. Families lit lamps at dusk, telling stories to comfort children. Small festivals were observed in simpler forms, honoring gods with private offerings rather than public gatherings. These quiet acts of devotion offered stability during a time when uncertainty felt ever present. The plague affected the economy as well. With fewer workers available for fields, workshops, and trade caravans, production slowed. Harvests were smaller, and some markets saw gaps in their usual goods. Yet even in this reduced activity, people demonstrated adaptability, sharing resources, adjusting expectations, and relying on extended family networks. As months passed, the waves of illness slowly receded. Communities emerged, changed but resilient. Families mourned loved ones yet found comfort in the bonds that had supported them. The empire, though weakened in certain areas, remained intact. Its roads, aqueducts, and administrative systems continued to function, offering a framework for recovery. The experience of the plague left lingering questions. People wondered about fate, health, and the fragility of life. Philosophers reflected on the nature of adversity, while leaders considered ways to rebuild strength and stability. Though the Antonine Plague introduced sorrow and uncertainty, it also revealed the endurance of Roman society, its capacity to adapt, care, and continue forward even when shadows gathered across the horizon. The soldier emperors in the decades that followed the plague and growing economic strain, Rome entered a period defined by rapid political shifts and rising military influence. This era, often referred to as the time of the soldier emperors, unfolded during the 3rd century, a century marked by both turbulence and unexpected resilience. Leadership changed frequently, sometimes within months, as generals stationed along the frontiers were proclaimed emperor by their troops. These transitions reflected deeper pressures, but also highlighted the enduring structure that allowed Rome to persist even in uncertain times. Frontier legions had grown increasingly important. They defended vast borders stretching along rivers, deserts, and mountain ranges. As threats emerged from tribes to the north and east, soldiers relied heavily on capable commanders who shared their hardships and earned their loyalty. When distant emperors seemed unable to address frontier needs, troops turned to their own leaders, elevating them to imperial authority. These new emperors often came from modest backgrounds, men who had built their reputations through discipline, courage, and steady leadership. Despite frequent changes in leadership, the empire did not collapse. Each new emperor took steps to stabilize their region, reform administration, and secure borders. They repaired roads, strengthened fortresses, and encouraged trade where possible. Some introduced new coinage to combat inflation. Others enacted policies to bolster the army or support provincial communities. Their efforts demonstrated a commitment to sustaining Rome, even amid the uncertainties of rapid succession. Cities continued their routines, adapting to the shifting political landscape with remarkable calm. Markets remained open, baths hosted conversations, and theaters offered performances that brought joy to citizens seeking respite from concerns. Local governments, long accustomed to managing their own affairs, maintained order and ensured that essential services continued. These municipal structures, overseen by councils, magistrates, and civic volunteers, provided stability at a time when imperial leadership fluctuated. The soldier emperors also faced external challenges. Groups from beyond the Rhine and Danube pressed against borders, seeking opportunities amid Rome's internal distractions. In the east, shifting powers tested the empire's resilience. Yet the legions responded with discipline and endurance, holding fortified lines and launching counter-campaigns when necessary. Their efforts preserved the territorial integrity of the empire during one of its most vulnerable periods. In this era, everyday life varied greatly by region. Some provinces felt little change, continuing to prosper due to fertile lands and stable local economies. Others near border regions experienced disruptions, occasional migrations, military movements, or temporary shortages. Still, the adaptability of local communities allowed them to manage challenges with resourcefulness and cooperation. The period of the soldier emperors revealed both the vulnerabilities and strengths of the Roman system. Rapid changes in leadership exposed cracks in political structures, but the resilience of provincial administration, military discipline, and local communities allowed the empire to endure. Even in moments of uncertainty, Rome's people demonstrated their capacity to hold steady, guided by traditions, shared identity, and the quiet hope that stability would one day return. The empire feels the strain as the 3rd century progressed. The cumulative pressures of economic difficulties, political instability, military challenges, and social changes began to weigh more heavily upon the Roman Empire. These challenges did not arise from a single source, but from many small shifts, like the slow wearing of stone beneath water. Together, they created a landscape where strain became increasingly visible, even as communities continued to persevere with the resilience that had long characterized Roman life. Economically, inflation remained a growing concern. The production of coinage changed as governments, seeking to fund the military and administrative needs, reduced the silver content of coins. This debasement affected trust in currency, complicating trade and everyday transactions. Merchants adjusted prices, farmers negotiated payments in goods rather than coins, and households adapted their spending to accommodate shifting values. Each adjustment was small, yet the accumulation shaped the fabric of economic life. Military pressure increased along several frontiers. Northern tribes, recognizing Rome's moment of instability, tested defenses more frequently. Eastern rivals challenged territories that had previously remained secure. Legions responded with dedication, but continuous deployments placed stress on soldiers and their families. Camps grew busier as reinforcements arrived, while nearby villages supported the needs of troops through food, supplies, and trade. Urban centers faced their own challenges. Population shifts, economic strain, and occasional shortages created periods of tension. Yet despite this, cities remained active. Bathhouses continued to offer warm refuge, forums hosted steady gatherings, and temples welcomed those seeking comfort or guidance. Public life persisted, supported by the enduring habits and structures that had defined Rome for centuries. Social changes added further complexity. The growing divide between wealthy elites and ordinary citizens felt sharper in times of hardship. Large estates continued to absorb land, while smaller farmers navigated difficulties with limited resources. In some regions, tenant farming became more common, reshaping the relationship between landowners and laborers. Urban workers faced fluctuating wages and uncertain employment, prompting greater reliance on family networks and community associations. Even with these pressures, culture and tradition provided continuity. Festivals still brightened the calendar, bringing communities together for music, food, and celebration. Storytellers shared legends that reminded listeners of Rome's long history. Theaters staged plays that offered laughter or reflection. These moments of unity created spaces where people could breathe deeply, finding reassurance in shared experiences. Provincial life remained remarkably stable in many regions. Fertile lands in North Africa continued to produce grain for the empire. Peaceful provinces in Gaul, Spain, and parts of the East maintained strong economies and local governance. These regions, relatively insulated from frontier pressures, helped sustain the broader empire through production, trade, and cultural vitality. By the end of the 3rd century, the Roman Empire felt undeniably strained, but not defeated. Its vast territories still held together through shared identity, long-standing infrastructure, and the determination of its people. Families continued their routines, towns maintained order, and soldiers remained vigilant. Though shadows lengthened across the horizon, Rome's enduring spirit shone through, preparing the empire for a period of reform and renewal that lay just ahead. Diocletian's reforms. As the 3rd century drew to a close, the Roman Empire faced a landscape marked by strain and uncertainty. Yet it also stood at the threshold of renewal. Into this moment stepped Diocletian, a leader whose calm discipline, strategic mind, and deep sense of responsibility reshaped the empire's future. His reign marked a turning point, a deliberate effort to restore stability, strengthen governance, and prepare Rome for the centuries ahead. Diocletian rose from modest origins, a reminder that the empire still offered pathways for those with talent and determination. Upon becoming emperor, he recognized the enormity of the challenges he faced. The vastness of the empire made it difficult for one person to manage effectively. Economic pressures, unrest along borders, and internal instability required steady leadership and structural change. His first major reform was the creation of the Tetrarchy rule by 4 emperors. Diocletian appointed Maximian as co-emperor, granting him equal status to govern the western regions while Diocletian oversaw the east. Beneath them, 2 junior emperors, known as Caesars, assisted with administration and succession. This system divided responsibility, allowing leaders to respond more quickly to regional needs. It created a sense of shared purpose and provided a framework intended to prevent future succession crises. Diocletian also addressed the military. He restructured legions, repositioned units along vulnerable borders, and improved fortifications. His approach emphasized readiness, flexibility, and coordinated defense. Soldiers received clearer commands, and frontier communities gained renewed confidence in Rome's protection. These measures brought stability to regions that had long felt the pressure of external threats. Economic reforms sought to ease inflation and stabilize currency. Diocletian introduced new coinage with higher metal content and attempted to control prices through the Edict on Maximum Prices. Though difficult to enforce universally, the edict reflected his desire to address financial strain and protect citizens from exploitation. Local governors worked to implement measures that balanced fairness with practicality. Administrative reforms also reshaped governance. Provinces were subdivided to improve efficiency, and new layers of bureaucracy ensured consistent oversight. While these changes increased the size of government, they also strengthened communication and accountability across vast distances. Communities found it easier to resolve disputes, access public resources, and maintain order. Religion played a notable role in Diocletian's reign. Seeking unity, he supported traditional Roman beliefs and, at times, imposed strict measures on groups he feared would disrupt harmony. These actions introduced tension, but also highlighted his desire to preserve cohesion in a world experiencing many shifts. Despite the magnitude of his reforms, daily life for most citizens continued in familiar rhythms. Farmers tended their fields, merchants conducted business, and families gathered for evening meals. Yet, beneath this familiarity, they felt the gentle effects of Diocletian's efforts: steadier coinage, safer borders, and more attentive governance. Diocletian's reign represented a moment when thoughtful leadership offered Rome a path forward. His reforms did not erase all challenges, but they created a structure that guided the empire into its next chapter, a chapter defined by new identities, new centers of power, and the enduring determination of its people. Constantine and the new capital. As the Tetrarchy evolved and adapted to shifting dynamics, one figure quietly moved toward prominence: Constantine. His rise marked another turning point in Roman history, one shaped by vision, resilience, and a sense of destiny. Through a combination of political insight and military strength, Constantine ascended to leadership, eventually reshaping the empire in ways that would endure long after his lifetime. Constantine's early life exposed him to diverse influences. He traveled extensively with his father, observing the work of governors, soldiers, and administrators. These experiences broadened his understanding of the empire's needs and the challenges it faced. When conflict erupted within the Tetrarchy, Constantine navigated alliances and battles with care, ultimately securing his position as sole emperor. One of Constantine's most lasting contributions was the founding of a new capital, Constantinople. Located on the site of ancient Byzantium, the city sat at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, overlooking the shimmering waters of the Bosphorus. Its position offered strategic advantages: strong defenses, access to trade routes, and proximity to the wealth and creativity of the eastern provinces. Constantine envisioned a capital that blended Roman tradition with new beginnings. Construction of the new city unfolded with energy and optimism. Skilled artisans carved columns, paved streets, and decorated buildings with marble and mosaics. Engineers designed expansive forums, aqueducts, and gathering spaces. Homes, markets, and workshops soon filled the landscape, creating a vibrant urban center. Though rooted in Roman architecture, Constantinople carried an atmosphere of freshness, its streets wide, its harbor lively, its identity infused with both Roman and Eastern influences. Constantine also played a profound role in shaping the empire's religious future. His embrace of Christianity opened the door to new cultural and spiritual developments. The Edict of Milan granted tolerance to Christians, allowing them to practice openly. Churches were built across the empire, offering spaces for worship, community, and reflection. Though Constantine maintained respect for traditional beliefs, his policies marked a significant shift in the empire's spiritual landscape. Under Constantine's leadership, administration continued to evolve. He introduced reforms to strengthen governance, support trade, and enhance military organization. Coins bearing his image circulated broadly, reinforcing his presence across distant provinces. His decisions reflected both practical concerns and a broader vision of unity, desire to create an empire that could stand resilient amid changing times. In daily life, these transitions brought subtle changes. Christian communities grew, holding gatherings marked by hymns and shared meals. Markets in the east thrived as Constantinople became a hub of trade. Travelers marveled at the city's beauty, its luminous marble structures reflecting the sun as ships glided into its harbors. Meanwhile, Rome continued to maintain cultural significance, even as political power shifted eastward. Constantine's reign blended tradition with innovation. He honored Rome's legacy while guiding the empire toward new structures and beliefs. His establishment of Constantinople symbolized a fresh beginning, a capital that would carry the empire through future centuries, enduring even as the world around it continued to transform. The empire divides as Rome moved through the 4th century. The empire's vastness, diversity, and evolving challenges made unified rule increasingly complex. The administrative foundations laid by Diocletian and expanded by Constantine created a system that could adapt to these pressures. Over time, a natural division emerged, one not born of conflict, but of practicality. The Roman Empire gradually separated into eastern and western halves, each developing its own rhythm, identity, and centers of power. This division was not sudden. It unfolded through decades of administrative adjustments, political developments, and practical realities. Emperors ruled jointly, often governing different regions while maintaining communication and cooperation. The eastern capital at Constantinople grew in influence, its bustling harbors, strong defenses, and flourishing culture making it a natural administrative center. Meanwhile, the western capital shifted between cities such as Milan, Ravenna, and occasionally Rome, depending on strategic needs. The East and West developed unique characteristics. The Eastern Empire, benefiting from thriving trade routes and ancient urban centers, enjoyed growing prosperity. Cities such as Antioch, Alexandria, and Constantinople buzzed with commerce, scholarship, and artistic expression. Greek became increasingly prominent in administration and education, blending with Roman traditions to create a distinctive cultural identity. The Western Empire, though still influential and vibrant, faced more challenges along its borders. Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, Franks pressed against frontiers, moving in patterns shaped by migrations, climate, and changing alliances. Western cities remained lively, but some regions experienced shifts in population and resources. Latin continued to dominate public life, anchoring the West in traditions that stretched back centuries. Despite these differences, the two halves remained connected. Roads allowed travel, trade, and communication. Shared laws, military cooperation, and religious structures linked East and West. Families with relatives in different provinces exchanged letters and stories, maintaining bonds across distances. Cultural practices flowed between regions, blending Eastern influences with Western customs in gentle and subtle ways. For ordinary citizens, the division brought little immediate disruption. Farmers harvested their crops, merchants filled markets, and artisans crafted goods with care. Festivals, meals, and rituals unfolded in familiar patterns. People identified with their local cities and communities, even as they remained part of the broader Roman world. Administration adjusted gradually. Taxes were collected locally, governors managed provinces with increasing autonomy, and military commands adapted based on regional needs. Though emperors in each half coordinated efforts when possible, the growing complexity of governance meant that decisions were often made closer to home. This localized approach helped address immediate concerns, but also reinforced the separation. By the end of the 4th century, the idea of two Roman empires, Eastern and Western, felt natural, even if unity remained an ideal. The East grew in strength and culture, while the West navigated a landscape marked by both continuity and challenge. Yet both shared the same heritage: roads built by earlier generations, laws shaped by centuries of tradition, and memories rooted in the long story of Rome. The division reflected not decline, but adaptation, a way for a vast world to manage itself with balance and care. It set the stage for the centuries to come, when each half would follow its own path while carrying forward the spirit of Rome. Life in a changing world. As the Roman Empire entered its later centuries, life across its vast territories continued to unfold with a mixture of familiarity and change. Even as political structures shifted and borders evolved, families and communities held onto the gentle rhythms that defined their daily existence. The world around them was changing, yet the essence of Roman life, its traditions, routines, and quiet resilience, remained steady and comforting. In the cities, mornings began with the clatter of wooden shutters and the soft calls of vendors preparing their stalls. Markets filled slowly as merchants arranged baskets of fruit, amphorae of oil, bolts of cloth, and pottery shaped with local designs. Citizens navigated the bustling streets, purchasing bread, exchanging news, and greeting neighbors with warm familiarity. These interactions created a sense of continuity that carried people through uncertain times. Homes reflected both tradition and adaptation. Wealthier families decorated their villas with mosaics and frescoes that blended classical themes with new artistic influences from the East. Simpler households, though less adorned, radiated warmth through shared meals and well-worn routines. In these homes, families gathered around low tables, tore bread, shared stews gently simmered with herbs, and spoke quietly about their day. Rural life retained a sense of timelessness. Farmers rose early to tend fields, guiding livestock through dewy grass or pruning vines beneath morning light. Tools passed down through generations were repaired and reused, symbolizing the connection between past and present. Though economic challenges occasionally altered crop yields or trade expectations, rural communities often found comfort in the stability of the land. Along the empire's borders, soldiers and civilians lived intertwined lives. Military camps buzzed with disciplined activity training, repairs, and patrols, while nearby settlements offered markets, inns, and workshops that supported both soldiers and travelers. Children played near fortress gates, their laughter blending with the rhythmic sound of marching footsteps. Travel remained a defining feature of the empire. Roads built centuries earlier continued to guide merchants, officials, and pilgrims through landscapes of mountains, plains, and coastlines. Inns along these roads provided warm meals, straw-filled beds, and the soft glow of oil lamps. Travelers shared stories from distant provinces, weaving a tapestry of the empire's diversity. Education persisted even as political worlds shifted. Schools taught reading, math, and rhetoric, skills valued in both civic and commercial life. Libraries housed scrolls of philosophy, science, and literature, offering quiet refuge for scholars. The works of earlier Roman and Greek thinkers continued to inspire, reminding learners of their place within a long tradition of knowledge. Yet life also reflected the realities of change. Some cities shrank as populations moved, seeking opportunities or safety elsewhere. Certain regions, affected by invasions or economic strain, adapted by strengthening local governance and relying more heavily on community networks. The empire's connective tissue, its roads, laws, and shared identity still held, but the world felt different than it had in centuries past. Even in times of uncertainty, the people of Rome maintained a profound capacity for resilience. Their routines, relationships, and traditions created a quiet sense of stability that carried them forward. In this balance between continuity and change, Roman life revealed its enduring strength, the ability to adapt while honoring the rhythms that gave it meaning. New faiths and old traditions. During the later centuries of the Roman Empire, spiritual life evolved in gentle yet profound ways. Old traditions remained cherished, but new beliefs gradually took root, blending with established practices and reshaping the cultural landscape. This coexistence of faiths created an atmosphere of exploration and reflection as people across the empire sought meaning, comfort, and connection through spiritual paths both familiar and new. Traditional Roman religion continued to occupy an important role in daily life. Families honored household gods Lares and Penates with small offerings placed near flickering lamps. Temples dedicated to Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and other ancient deities stood in towns and cities, their columns gleaming under the sun. Festivals marking seasonal changes or historic events brought communities together with music, feasts, and processions. These celebrations provided a sense of continuity, linking present generations to the customs of their ancestors. At the same time, Christianity grew steadily across the empire. What began as a small community of believers expanded into a widespread faith embraced by people from diverse backgrounds. Churches appeared in major cities and small towns alike, their interiors filled with candlelight and soft chanting. Christians gathered for prayers, shared meals, and teachings that emphasized compassion, forgiveness, and hope. Their sense of community offered comfort during times of uncertainty, drawing many toward this new path. The conversion of Constantine and the Edict of Milan eased restrictions on Christian worship, allowing the faith to flourish openly. Over time, Christianity gained prominence in imperial administration, influencing laws, art, and public life. Bishops emerged as important figures, guiding local communities with a blend of spiritual authority and civic responsibility. As churches expanded, they often repurposed older buildings or constructed new ones adorned with mosaics depicting serene religious imagery. Yet other faiths also thrived. Eastern religions, long present in the empire, continued to attract followers. The worship of Isis, Mithras, and Cybele offered rituals that emphasized personal devotion, mystery, and spiritual renewal. These traditions blended elements of meditation, symbolic ceremonies, and seasonal observances. Their temples, often dimly lit and scented with incense, provided quiet sanctuaries within bustling cities. Philosophical traditions, especially Stoicism and Neoplatonism, offered intellectual frameworks for understanding the world. Scholars debated the nature of virtue, the structure of the cosmos, and the meaning of a good life. These discussions influenced both religious and secular thought, shaping the way people interpreted their experiences. The coexistence of multiple faiths created a cultural mosaic. Markets echoed with conversations about beliefs, temples and churches shared neighborhoods, and families often included members who practiced different traditions. Rather than erasing old customs, new faiths wove themselves gently into the fabric of Roman life. This blend of spiritual practices reflected the empire's diversity and adaptability. People sought guidance through rituals, prayers, and philosophical reflection, each finding paths that resonated with their hopes and concerns. Through this spiritual richness, the Roman world revealed its capacity to evolve while honoring the memories of all who had lived within it. The West falters. As the 5th century approached, the Western Roman Empire found itself confronting pressures that had grown slowly over generations. These challenges, once manageable, now pressed more heavily against its borders, its economy, and its social fabric. Yet, even as the West struggled, its story unfolded not as a sudden collapse, but as a gradual transformation shaped by countless small changes in the lives of ordinary people. One of the primary pressures came from migrations. Groups such as the Goths, Vandals, and Alemanni moved across Europe, seeking new lands, safety, or opportunities. Changing climates, distant conflicts, and shifting alliances pushed many toward Roman territories. Some entered peacefully, settling as farmers or soldiers under negotiated agreements. Others arrived in larger numbers, creating tension along borders. The West, with fewer resources than the East, struggled to accommodate these movements. Economically, the challenges intensified. Trade routes became less secure, reducing the flow of goods that once linked distant provinces. Cities, already strained by earlier hardships, faced shortages in certain supplies. Wealth concentrated among fewer households, while small landowners found it increasingly difficult to maintain their properties. In some regions, coins grew scarce, prompting communities to rely more heavily on local trade and barter. The military faced strain as well. Though Roman soldiers remained dedicated, resources for equipping and supporting legions grew thin. Frontier defenses weakened, and communication between distant regions became more difficult. Commanders adapted where they could, forming alliances with migrating groups or integrating foreign soldiers into Roman ranks. These efforts brought temporary stability, but also shifted the identity of the Western army. Urban life continued but changed in tone. Some cities shrank as residents moved to the countryside or safer regions. Public buildings, once bustling with activity, saw fewer repairs. Markets remained open, though goods varied seasonally depending on trade conditions. Families gathered more often at home, finding comfort in familiar routines, even as the world outside grew less predictable. Despite these pressures, ordinary people persisted with quiet resilience. Farmers continued to cultivate fields, relying on local networks for support. Craftsmen repaired tools, built furniture, and produced pottery used in households across their communities. Churches became anchors of stability, offering spiritual comfort and practical assistance. Priests cared for the sick, distributed food to the needy, and encouraged unity during difficult seasons. In some regions, life remained relatively stable. The Italian countryside still produced abundant harvests in many areas, and parts of Gaul maintained strong local economies. These pockets of stability helped sustain the West longer than many expected. But over time, the strain became undeniable. As central authority weakened, local leaders gained power, shaping communities according to regional needs rather than imperial directives. The idea of Roman identity remained strong, but the structures that once supported it, administration, trade, military organization, grew thinner. By the mid-5th century, the Western Empire stood at a crossroads. Change was inevitable, yet the spirit of Rome persisted in its people, its memories, and its traditions. Even as the West faltered, its legacy endured, carried by families, cities, and cultures that had grown within the vast embrace of the Roman world.